All right, everybody, welcome to the February 13th regular City Council meeting of Cross Lake. Let's stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you all for coming. Yep. Not you, Jackson.
I was talking
It's the people out here.
I was talking to Marcia.
I think this is the first meeting we have not had any additions to the agenda, so we can skip that. So let's start out with public forum. Action may or may not be taken on the issues raised. If council requires more information or time for consideration, the issue will be placed on the agenda of the next regular council meeting. Speaker must state their name and address. Does anybody have anything? Hello, Pat.
Hi, Pat Netco, 36084 County Road 66, Cross Lake. I would just like to give a shout out and a thank you to all those who helped with our Winterfest celebration. Cindy's on vacation this week, and I just want to give a shout out to her and to everybody for the bonfire, and to TJ for all the work at the community center and all the things. It was a very successful weekend for us businesses, and I just want to say thank you.
Great. Okay, anybody else? We'll close public forum then, and we'll move on to the consent calendar. Has anybody had a chance to go over it? Good. Any questions?
I need to pull C2, the regular council meeting minutes of December 12th.
Okay. That it?
Yes.
Okay, so let's have a motion to approve the consent calendar without two.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Let's talk about two. What's your question on it, Marcia? Let's get her done.
I have to make a correction. Apparently, I didn't, on the motion 12R0322, I made a motion when we were looking at the revenue statement, and I said I wanted to transfer $306,826.61. And apparently I didn't say from the general fund. We were looking at the general fund, but I didn't mention general fund, so I need to make a motion to correct that motion from December 12th to read to transfer $306,826.61 from the general fund to the sewer operating fund.
Okay, and is that descriptive enough? That's all we need to do?
I had
Well-
seconded, I think. No,
Yeah, well,
also.
right now, the motion doesn't make sense. It's just transferring, it doesn't say where it's being transferred from.
That's a motion you're making, I'll
Yeah.
second it, Marcia.
Okay, motion and a second. Any conversation? Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we're going to move on to the mayor and council members' report. And is Michael Fish here? Oh, great. You will come up in a little bit, but we're going to have a VRBO discussion. Who wants to start it? All right, I'll start. Well, we've been kicking VRBOs around town here for a long time. We got a lot of opposition. We got a lot of people that are angry with the rentals next door. So I feel it's time to put some teeth in it and make a, what's the word? Ordinance, yeah, thank you. Make an ordinance for them. So I'm going to start out with some ideas that I have. Chip has got a write-up in here, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Has anybody worked on that?
I read through
Right.
it, and I couldn't find any fault with any of it. I thought it was
It was really
well done.
concrete and
Yep.
solid.
And Chip is not here.
Pete worked with him on that, so
Yeah,
he
Pete,
should
do
be
you
able
want
to
to
answer any questions.
have anything to fill in on it?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. So this is the draft ordinance for short-term rentals for the city of Cross Lake. So where we're kind of sitting, or where we are at with that right now is Crow Wing County has since repealed their ordinance on this. So we're shopping around and looking for, did some searches through some different communities on how they regulate and what their ordinances are, and this is a hybrid of that. The real takeaway, what Chip and I were working on with this, and largely a lot of his efforts went into this, was to make it as simple as possible for safety walkthroughs for the fire department, and then having their septic system sized to the size of individuals that are going to be overnighting on the property. So this is the first take on it. Like you said, it's rough in its form, but if you have any input on it, certainly give us a yell. Any errors or spellings, things like that, please let us be aware of that as well too. So
So if the council has got the appetite tonight to say yes, create an ordinance, then let's start it April 15th.
I would think this one would want to give it maybe one more shot, just so everybody can feel good about it, you know, from between now and perhaps the next meeting. So,
What do
Has
you mean
the-
by everybody?
you know,
Has-
or just so it counts, everybody has time to read
Has the
it.
city attorney reviewed it?
And that's the next step. We'll have
Yeah.
him review that as well too.
We can't
Exactly
really
for-
adopt it without having the city attorney review it.
Exactly.
That's just my opinion. That's not,
I agree.
Well, of course, I mean, we don't have it. But I mean, we could make a motion to move it forward so that we have it at the next meeting. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that I would like to see in it, and then I would like Mr. Fischelsbacher, him and I had a conversation the other day, and he is a rental, and I got a lot of respect for him through our conversation, so I'd like him to share a few things. But to me, to make some rules and not have teeth in it, we might as well not do anything. So I would like there to be a $500 initial licensing fee renewed yearly. And I would really like to see a VRBO identification number on the fire number post at the street. So anybody driving by can identify that is a rental without having to look it up. And the contact information, owner, may be placed right there or close by. But I mean, I want neighbors to be able to access and know whose it is, and yet that in fact it is one. And then I would like there that if somebody doesn't, we're gonna have to notify the property owners. But if they don't figure they're gonna fly under the radar and not get the licensing, have a real strict $1,500 fine the first time, $3,000 the next time if they get caught. Mike, why don't you come up? Let's get into a conversation about it. So introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and where you came from.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. So my name is Mike Fish. I'm the broker of MN Real Estate and Management. Before that, I was a primary broker of PMI Minnesota. So for the last several years, I've been managing VRBOs in Crow Wing and the counties around it. I work in Aiken and Mille Lacs and Morrison. And it's no exaggeration that I've managed several hundred bookings. And I really appreciate the opportunity for multiple reasons. I agree with 100% of what you're saying. I had conversations with Bill Brecken when we originally did the ordinance in Crow Wing. I'm not gonna, I felt like we got what we wanted, but I'm a strong believer that the regulations have to be there to protect the neighbors and the community, or this thing isn't sustainable. So I greatly appreciate the opportunity. I will say, in my opinion, there's definitely a right way and a wrong way to do this, and I'm all about regulating it and regulating it right, because I compete against people who are doing it the wrong way. And there's several things that I've developed over the years. I'm here with opening my business up as hopefully being a resource. I'll share my 5-page rental agreement. I'll share my processes, my systems. what we do. The reason why we have so few problems has to do with how we market it. I love what you just said. Every rental I have has a brokerage sign in the front yard with my personal cell phone, with my brokerage on it. And I know it'll never happen, but if I had my way to do a short-term rental in Crow Wing, you'd have to hire a licensed broker, someone that has to answer to the state and answer to the rules. I strongly agree with a $1,500 to $3,000 fine for folks that are trying to go under the radar, at least a $500 fine for police calls. But I also will say I firmly believe that the idea that short-term rentals impede on the quiet enjoyment of the neighbors, that's not short-term rentals, that's bad management of short-term rentals. And I want to put all my resources out there to help the conversation in any way I can, because it does have to do with how you market, and I can go into details on that. It does have to do with your rules, and it has to do with the enforcement of the rules. 100% of the neighbors, I've got a letter that I introduce myself to the neighbors. 100% of the neighbors know me, they trust me, they text me 24/7. The beginning of my rental agreement says, if you're gonna stay with us, have the utmost respect for our neighbors and community. After all, they didn't choose to live next to a rental. So there's many things I do, and I do have people that will book through Airbnb, read my rental agreement, and cancel. And those are the people that we don't want. But I do want to stress that the vast majority of my guests over the last several years are families coming up that have a connection to the area. There's no exaggeration that 80% of the time it's one family from the cities and then family members from all over the country or the world flying in to just experience something that we experience every day. And I'm not saying people take it for granted, but the price is exclusive, and most of my rentals are $500 to $800 rentals. I assure you, people aren't coming in and paying $5,000 to stay at a rental to trash the place. The other thing I'd like to mention is I know it's easy to say that a lot of clients that have short-term rentals are out-of-state investors and they don't care. I've managed about 50 plus places over the last several years, and 9 out of 10 of the people I work with and work for grew up here. These are our families, our neighbors, people that have come up here their whole life. They've got a connection. And for the last 100 years, it was part of the American tradition to bring the family up to the resort, right, every summer. And short-term rentals are really a part of that now. Our goal is every year that folks come back year after year after year. These get stronger year after year. So I want to mention that if it's marketed right, I think that it's a great thing for the community. It's a huge economic impact. I have 3 clients that plan to go on this spring that purchased over $1 million houses on the Whitefish chain last fall. One of them is on Dream Island, $1 million to VRBO. And so I can't tell you the impact, negative or positive, that the decisions we're making are going to have on the real estate market at a time when we're all nervous about what's going on. I did about $4 million myself between selling VRBOs and helping people purchase VRBOs. I think it's part of the landscape, and I think that what you're saying, I agree with 100%. It's how can we navigate it? How can we navigate it for everybody?
So a couple of questions I got for you, Mike.
Yeah.
What neighboring communities are you working with? Give me the spiel on that.
Neighboring communities?
Breezy Point?
Yeah, let me bring up Breezy Point, because I was at Breezy Point on Monday. Angel was very gracious. They said that they're calling me back to sit down kind of one-on-one and help them think this through. I will tell you, I was asked at Breezy Point, why are you here? And I said, because I'm here because I'm defending my clients that have trusted me and defending an industry I strongly believe in. They said, do you manage any at Breezy Point? And I said, no. I have refused to manage in Breezy Point, because when you only allow 4 rentals a year, you're not allowing rentals. And I will tell you though that I haven't worked in Breezy. I've got 20 rentals right now. I've got 10 to 15 that I'm onboarding. I'll be at about 30 to 35 by midsummer. My new brokerage, I'm in real estate and management. I started 2 years ago, so I kind of started over with my clientele. But East Gull Lake Shore, looking at what they're doing, I think is something that I have to respect. But that's not That's not something that they've opened up. They're not open to short-term rental. Whereas Cross Lake, you know, whether people like it or not, we are vacation land for the Twin Cities. And I know something about that. I lived in South Minneapolis, you know, and I know my clientele and my clients and my guests. And if things are done right, I think it's something that doesn't have to be limited if it's done right. But it does have to do with being focused on the neighbors and focused on the community and making sure that people understand that if they're going to come up here, that they have to respect our neighbors in our community. And I will tell you, in all honesty, I've had 3 calls, 450 rentals the last year, 3 calls in a year. And I can go into details on that. All that was neighbors saying, "Hey, Mike, what about this?" You know, and I dealt with it immediately. If I can't be there at 2 in the morning, if there's an issue, not that I had to do that, but if I can't be there, it's not, I'm a strong believer in some of the stuff Crow Wing did, and one of the things we push for is a registered agent to be there within 45 minutes. But everybody got around it because all the cleaning companies said, "Well, just put us down for $100, rather than hiring a real property manager that was a professional and knew what they were doing.
Sandy?
Mike, where do you reside?
I live technically right on the border in Piers. I'm about 45 minutes away.
So do you employ a number of people who act as agents to, you know, to whom people, you know? the people
I've got
call?
several people, but at this point, I insist on being the first contact. 100% of every guest that's ever stayed with me has my personal cell phone. They've been asked to call or text me 24/7, and 100% of my neighbors have my personal cell phone.
But you can't be the one who's always there within 45 minutes, so you,
I normally I can be. If not, I've got 3-4 people that I can call
Okay.
that technically work for my cleaning company, which is a different, legally a different entity, but they can have, but absolutely I can call and have someone from Nisswa
That's what
here
I
in 10
asked.
minutes.
I asked Mike, I said, how are you going to respond to it? Because these happen at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday or Saturday night. The police are busy someplace else, nobody goes, there's no documentation. So however we do that, I think I mentioned deputizing people or something.
I agree 100%, and by the way, I know it might sound a little bit aggressive, and a lot of people listening that are doing VRBO might really disagree with that, but with what I'm going to say, but I firmly believe that aside from the economic value, certainly there should be fines attached for everything, and I'm not opposed at all to a 1 to 3% compliance tax on short-term rentals. It is a privilege to be up on the whitefish chain. I always say it's not even work to put something up on the whitefish chain because it is a whitefish chain. And a 1 to 3% compliance tax to compensate Cross Lake, so they've got, when I did the math on Breezy Point, you know, they allow up to 60 rentals. If they open it up fully, my average rental is grossing around 50 to 60,000 a year. It's not an exaggeration. At 1 to 3%, Cross Lake could see, you know, in the ballpark of 100,000 a year to compensate them for leaving this open and hiring someone to do proper enforcement. But I'm a firm believer there should be a minimum $500 fine for any call. And I've got many other ideas and angles that could be considered. But I agree with you, keeping it as simple as possible, but not, the important thing is that we're not punishing our neighbors that are doing it right. I'm the first one to say the bad actors have got to be taken care of, or this ruins it for everybody.
So my next question to Mike was, can we hire you to manage this? And he says, you don't have to hire me, I don't want any money. He's trying to protect the industry. I mean, that's where your interest is.
I'm honestly here because I've got about 5 clients coming up, and again, some of these people literally purchased $1 million homes last year at a VRBO, and I need to protect their interests. I've also got current VRBOs right now within your area that would end up being forced to sell or lose their homes. And there's a lot of people that I work with, and I've got one I'm putting up on Bay Lake right now. They've had it for 30 years. They're business people that because of everything have had a really rough few years, and they called me and they said, Mike, we have no choice. We either have to sell or VRBO. Not something they ever thought that they would have to do. But because of the times we're in, I can VRBO it on the side. Now my owners, it's owner use. right? They've got an app on their cell phone. They block out the time they want to use. I fill it up when they're not using it. And the idea is they don't know the difference because I do everything from A to Z. But I will tell you that 9 out of 10 properties I manage are owner-use properties, and in multiple cases, I've got another lady I'm putting on right now, honestly not in Cross Lake, but another lady I'm putting on right now, she's 60 years old. Her husband passed away 3 years ago. She can't keep the cabin without VRBOing. They've had it for 30 years. She just needs to VRBO for 10 years until she can move up here. And those are the situations that are the reality on the ground, is these. I'm not saying there's not some people that might be pushing things, but most of the people that VRBO are our neighbors and our friends and our family that maybe have to VRBO on the side to be able to keep their property in the first place, let alone the effect that shutting down VRBOs will have on the market. I'm surprised that there's not 10 other brokers here, because I will tell you that at least 20% of the real estate boom we've had in the last 5 years has been connected to VRBOs.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just a drop in the bucket. People, I work for some people, like some people works for hiring me. There's other people that it doesn't, but I'm willing to share all my processes and everything I have and just open that up and take that risk to my business. For hopefully that means something to everybody, that my competitors can see what I'm doing and people can see what I'm doing and decide not to hire me because they know how to do it.
So Brad, can you see yourself working with Mike trying to write an ordinance?
Yeah, I mean, I have no concerns working with him or anyone else. It's more, city attorney, I can't make policy. I need some committee or the council in the end to tell
Yeah,
me exactly
absolutely.
what you want in that
Right.
policy or ordinance, but I don't have a problem working with Mike.
So then the question to the council is should we authorize Mike and Brad to spend a little time in the next month and put some thoughts together? And Peter, if you want to be involved in it, or Chip, if you want to be. No? No, I mean, they'll incorporate it. Yeah. But that's where you should probably be somewhat of a part.
They talked about that before you got here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
would be honored to have the opportunity to be involved.
But I mean, I guess where I'm at is I want to do something. We've been talking about it for years. It's time to do something. And if we're going to do it, I want it to have teeth in it. I want it to.
And I would love to be a part of that. My clients right now are very, very nervous. And I've told them, I said, hey, we just have to wait and see what this process looks like in the end. So I would love to be involved in that process.
So do other communities have in their ordinance that they have to have brokers?
No, I don't know if I'll ever get my way on that.
Oh,
I
okay, you
would
made it
tell
sound
that-
like it was.
But I would tell you that it would solve the problem in a heartbeat. And I don't say that out of selfishness. It's like I tell my clients that are thinking about doing this, and I do pick up clients regularly that try to do it on their own. This is a lot more complicated than people think, and it gets really ugly really fast if you're not doing things right.
So, Mike, does working through with a broker, does that create additional cost to the VRBO owners?
It absolutely does. And that's why a lot of people self-manage, and some people are very good at self-managing and very happy to do it. But a lot of people have their own jobs. They're obviously not here every day. They've got their families, and that's where things can go south.
So is part of your recommendation that all VRBO owners within our city must work through a broker?
That'd be a dream come true for me. There's 4 or 5 brokers that specialize this in the area. I'm not the only one, and I'm surprised that seem to be the only one here. In fact, I've reached out to I'm not going to name names, but I reached out to one of my competitors a week ago, and I said, you got to come up to Cross Lake with me next week. And they said, Cross Lake isn't going to shut down VRBOs. Because of the how important this is to real estate and how many people are up here doing this right now. But I can't take the risk. That's why I'm here. And I don't know what the legal ramifications are to requiring somebody to have a licensed broker to manage a VRBO.
Well, we could do 2 strikes, and then if you want to continue, you have to have it licensed or something.
Yeah, I mean, if 2 strikes,
Give 'em a chance.
I think that would be a great in-between. If someone wants to try and do it themselves, You know, I wish I had had the time. This all hit me about a month ago as I had everybody trying to get licensed and everyone's like, Crow Wing's not gonna license us anymore. So I haven't had time to properly prepare. I would have loved to bring even recommendations from my neighbors because I'm very proud of what I built. You know, I've got one right in the middle of Baxter on white sand, and I've had 3 out of 4 of the neighbors that I know have come up to me and said, wow, we don't even know there's a VRBO here. Well, that's kind of the point.
Mike, how many properties do you manage right now
19 right now.
in the Cross Lake area?
No.
Oh.
No. I've got them all over Crow Wing. I've got 7 in Mille Lacs. I've got some in Aiken, 1 in Morrison and Cass. So right now I've only got 2 live within your area, and I've got 3 coming up that I'm what I call the onboarding process. There's a lot to getting them going, and then 2-3 more possible ones.
Is there anybody else? Excuse me. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this?
Any public comment
I was
on
going to
this?
say, I think once we draft something, we need to get it out to VRB owners themselves, and they need to have some input on it too. I don't think we can just all do this unilaterally.
Joe, are you going to come up and say anything? Yeah.
Thank you very much. I
Great.
greatly
Mike,
appreciate it.
thanks for coming.
I'm Joe Christensen. I'm an attorney. I do not live in Cross Lake. I do live on Whitefish Lake. My daughter and son-in-law live in Cross Lake, and they are on the lower Whitefish side of Anchor Point Road. They live immediately next door to a VRBO, and it's been a source of a lot of problems. You know, in thinking about zoning law, I've been here many times before for various permitting things. I've been in Crow Wing County. I've been in a number of the communities locally in the Lakes area as well as in the metro for various zoning matters. And I think it's worth recognizing something about VRBOs. VRBOs, in effect, allow a private property owner to, at their option, change their zoning, or at least change their use within the zoning, without a rezone, without a public hearing, without any process. I can buy, just like Mr. Fish was saying, he's got clients that come in, they buy homes, and they're specifically buying these homes to VRBO them. So they are taking residential, single-family dwellings, and they're converting them to commercial properties for commercial use, for financial gain. And that does multiple things. It creates all sorts of use discord, which is what you're talking about here. And then you have to manage the discord, which is what Crow Wing County basically threw their arms up and said, we're out. We're not even going to try and do it because it's such a mess. And now you, as the city, are left because the county backed out. They won't enforce. And now you have law enforcement issues here. You've got personnel that you're going to have to devote to this to try and manage it. You don't want to do it. The idea of hiring Mr. Fish to manage this for the cities is, I mean, it's a clear conflict of interest. He even just said himself that he's got these clients that he's got to protect their interests. Well, that's a conflict of interest if he's protecting the VRB owners against people who are experiencing problems with these. So other communities have done a number of things to address this. And it's in Florida, it's in other parts of the country, it's here locally, where they have severely backed off. And they've said, okay, we'll allow you to use your residential properties for rental purposes, but we're going to put certain restrictions on this rental activity. So if you want to lease it long-term, go ahead. But then they have ordinances where under 30 days, you only have so many times per year or per season even where you can do that. And that then starts drawing a balance between the rights of property owners that have nothing to do with this and just want to have single-family use against people who are coming in and converting these properties into commercial properties. It also impacts your whole real estate market, because now you have competitors in the real estate market bidding up the prices of these single-family homes against families that want to own them for family purposes. My daughter and her husband own their home on Anchor Point Road. They have 4 kids. They're trying to raise 4 kids. The VRBO next door had bachelorette parties and bachelor parties and this big event and that big event, and they complained about it. And initially, the neighbor did not have the license required by Crow Wing County. They hadn't registered. So they reported them to Crow Wing County, and there's been a number of conflicts now between my daughter and the neighbor. And what does the neighbor do? He's out harassing them. He puts cameras on his property all over my daughter's house, and that's probably legal. He's probably within his property boundaries. Well, my daughter's got a little 8-year-old girl whose bedroom is on that side of the house. They're very uncomfortable with this. I mean, if we could settle these things by combat, we'd have problems. But we don't do that, and we don't want to do that. What we want is some balance here. So I think Cross Lake needs to make a decision about where the direction of this city is going to go. Is this going to be party central? Are you going to turn all the lakeshore in the city of Cross Lake into basically commercial properties that are basically event centers on the lake? That's what these are. And you can say what you want. Mr. Fish wants to portray this as he vets these people and they're all just, wonderful people and they, very few problems and very large volume. I think that's a pipe dream. I've seen other VRBOs up here in this area. I've seen what goes on. It's awful. There's vulgar and lewd conduct right next to other people's family homes. It's completely inappropriate. And so you either ramp this up to the point where you've got some extreme enforcement mechanisms within your ordinance, or very serious. I mean, not extreme, but very serious, very impactful, and make the owners of these properties pay for it, and have the city do it. You don't hire a broker to enforce your city ordinances with his clients. That's a clear conflict of interest.
I have a question for you. I understand your completely how you feel. I'm wondering about if an ordinance was strict enough, that would it prevent, like, say for instance, a bachelorette party or a bachelor party, because if there were limitations on how many people could be there, quiet hours, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, would that, do you think, prevent the kind of situation that you're,
Well, to some extent, perhaps, but what do you do when people disregard that? And so there has to be some ability to enforce that, and there's a cost to that, and those people should pay for that. And the people that are doing this should pay for that as a commercial cost of operating their business, because that's what these are. They're businesses. And they're operating them for that purpose. And, Mr. Fish talks about the family cabin that's been in the family for years. I know all about that. My family has one. I've got friends and neighbors that have family cottages that are multi-generation. But they rent, there's a lot of month-long rentals. There's people that'll do that, and there's good income there. And there's a lot less potential for that. You get people up here on short-term, one-week rentals, and the way I view it is every week is somebody's big week. And so, and then that group goes, and the next big week group comes in. And so you're also impacting the resources. You're putting a lot of septic out into your septic fields. Most of these properties are on septics, not city sewer, although some are. You're taxing the well. You're overstressing what's going on in the lake. It's a very intensified use of a single-family lot. And I think, the time has come where we need to make a decision in terms of, the local governments and the policy that we're putting forth, how much of this we're going to tolerate, and what character we want our community to be in the future.
So Joe, do you think that the city could say we're going to allow 220 licenses for under 30 days? Could you limit the number, Brad?
Well, you asked Joe first.
Why couldn't we?
I actually think you probably could do some limitations in terms of how far you go and whether you get into an issue of
But I mean, looking at the
property
years
rights.
ahead, if there's 200 of them in town now, in 4 years, there might be 400 of them. So.
But I mean,
have
they
to get a
limit liquor
license.
licenses.
Exactly.
But, you know, maybe you also have to have setback rules between uses. So you can't have them within a half mile of each other or something, too. So you don't get a whole string of them together.
Well, I mean, exactly what you're talking about is the reason nothing has happened, because one thing leads to another, and it's difficult to draw this ordinance.
Well, but the easy way out is to limit the scope of the use. The easy way out of this is you've got a big scope right now. Anybody can take their property basically and rent it every week all year long. So start reducing that scope. Limit the amount of use like this that a property owner can devote their property to, and you're going to have less people doing it.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be easier to enforce. And then you're going to have much more vetting going on. And you're going to have fewer people to watch.
Dave, Joe, I've heard you several times use the term commercial. Do you feel that these are commercial operations?
Well, in effect, I mean, I guess just as a property lawyer, as somebody who's dealt with zoning my whole career, this is a really unique, you got to recognize how unique it is to be able to, in a zoning code, go in and flip a use with no permission.
Well,
That's not permitted anywhere else in the zoning code. You can't go in and start flipping your uses. If you're in zoning type ABC, you can't jump over to EFG without approval.
And with that would cause spot permitting. Spot zoning, excuse me.
Spot zoning.
Yeah. And spot zoning is a whole different can of worms again.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm not saying that you create a zone, but I suppose you could create a zone. And then by the nature of the zone, spot zoning is a very nuanced concept.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think this would be spot zoning because you'd have a lot of spots. But spot zoning is a different kind of cat where you put an incongruous zone right in the middle of something else, a small incongruous use right in the middle of something else, and it's kind of unique. Here you'd have multiple examples.
Okay. Thank you. That answers
So
me.
could you stop it because it's commercial use in a residential zone?
Pardon?
Could you stop short-term rental
I don't see why you couldn't.
in a residential zone?
The city has
Since
the
it's
power
a
to pass
commercial
ordinances
use?
to regulate this. There's multiple communities that have done it nationwide.
And don't everybody get excited. I'm not a proponent for that. I'm
But
just
there are
asking the
multiple
question.
examples nationwide where that's occurred, and those are enforceable. And there are, by the way, there are multiple sample zoning ordinances for this available, for short-term zoning. And so I'd be happy to assist if you're going to do that, but.
Chip, how much of this stuff did you cover in yours? Did you? All right.
I do have one comment on the ordinances. It says a number of guests, and it says 2 times a bedroom and then the sleeping area. I don't think I would open it up to a sleeping area. They could say the whole living room is a sleeping area.
No, it's based off their design, right, Pete, for septic?
Well, in the ordinance,
Really rough, Marcia.
well, I know, you wanted suggestions, and I'm saying I'd get rid of that right away.
I thought Chip's first crack at the ordinance was
Was
pretty
really
good, but
solid.
there are some things in there from a lawyer perspective that I read, like it prohibits events, but it doesn't define what an event is. And the same thing would be other areas where you could have sleeping. So there's some definitional things that you'd need to sharpen up for enforceability.
Because wouldn't you have a hard time if someone said, that's a sleeping area, and you had
Well, if it's too ambiguous,
Yeah.
it's hard to
It's a-
enforce it.
Other sleeping areas, well, anybody could say, well,
Right, right. So,
So a home with a three-bedroom septic system
6 people.
should only have 6 people.
yeah,
I mean,
Which I thought was really good. It really cut down.
that's the direction, I don't see him now, but I think that's the direction that Chip was actually
right,
looking
and
at.
I think
Yeah.
that's a good,
Yeah.
good idea, yep. But I'd go even further and say, you really ought to restrict the amount that these properties can be used for this use to cut down on the incentive for people to buy properties and convert them to these uses.
So are you saying that we should limit the number of times a VRB owner can actually rent out their
Yes.
property?
If the
Yeah.
septic system.
I think you should make the entire use less attractive, so you get less of it. And then it'll be less to enforce.
that's why,
Our
that's why
business
the.
community wouldn't support that. We'd catch, yeah. I mean,
Well, I
the
understand that,
economics of it is very good, and they like that. So-
well, but there's a cost, and these people are in effect doing this on the backs of their neighbors.
No, I
Well-
agree.
And the neighbors, like Mr. Fish said, the neighbors didn't choose to live next to VRBO. They chose to live in a single-family residential area with single-family residential properties next to them. And now they wake up one day and all of a sudden they basically have a commercial property next door.
Well,
That's the problem with
I
this.
think if we make the ordinances restrictive enough that maybe we can prevent some of what, your relatives are, forced to deal with and still allow VRBOs, because I think the business community.
The whole thing is that they come in and they price up the market, and we all pay that price for it, because then the home values go shooting up. We're not making 50, 60,000 on our homes. We're living in them and
Right.
paying the taxes.
Exactly. And you want to keep your community open to families that are like-minded, frankly. And the other thing is, I'd like to give a shout out to the resorts that you have here in the city of Cross Lake. You've got some fine resorts that have been here for generations that are available for this kind of use that, guess what, are zoned for it. They actually have commercial waterfront zoning to operate those resorts. They have to have it to operate those resorts. Without that zoning, they can't operate the resorts. And then they're subject to all sorts of state scrutiny and taxes and other things that these VRBOs aren't. So it's not a level playing field.
So do they pay to the short-term rentals, do they pay towards the hotel tax
I think,
in this?
well, I think they're legally supposed to.
They're supposed
I
to.
would hazard a
Are they
guess
all?
that the vast majority do not.
I think some do. The more responsible ones do.
Every
but not
place I've
always.
stayed at a VRBO, we were charged that, so.
Okay.
Okay,
And the legitimate ones do. In Cross Lake, I know there's a lot of illegitimate ones. I mean, they're just because we haven't gotten a handle on it.
that's kind of where we're trying to look at to go. Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Dave, can I say something
Sure.
about the past quick? Many years ago, we used to have a restriction on how many times you could rent your home per year. And I think it was 3 times. There was no way to enforce it. There was no way for someone to pull in that driveway and know, are those family member cars? Are those guest cars? And that's why we quit, that's why we got rid of that ordinance that we had.
But if they were licensed and they had to, they had to declare every time they had a renter?
Not that, but if they were now.
Yeah, but now.
Now they're good.
Tim, I hope you have all the answers here.
I have no answers, but I'm Tim Berg. I live at 12038 Harbor Lane, Cross Lake, Minnesota, otherwise known as Bayview Lodge. It all sounds great. I haven't had a chance to look at Chip's rendition of an ordinance. I appreciate everything that Mike had to bring to the table here. I think he brought a lot of good ideas. I can feel Joe's frustration. I've been fighting the VRBO thing since 2012, so I think I'm on 11 years or so. And my main thing is I resorts in the area in Ideal Corners and Cross Lake, we have a group called WALA, which is the Whitefish Area Lodging Association. There's been a state law since 1997. If you rent a room in Ideal Corners or Cross Lake, Minnesota, by law, you have to collect a 1% sales tax. And then you have to turn that into our group. And what you get in return for that is you get to be on our website, which is www.whitefish.org. So we have 12 VRBOs on our website. We know there's probably at least over 200 for the last 3 to 4 years. I've knocked on doors, I've left messages on people's vehicles where they advertise all their VRBOs, been very polite. I trust that these people are very good individuals. I can speak on behalf of all resorters in our group that we want VRBOs to stay. We need VRBOs to stay. Our restaurants, our shops, our golf courses, in order for us to sustain, we don't have enough room as resorts to keep everybody in business here. So we want that. I'm available if Chip wants any help, if anybody needs any help, you got my contact information. I just want to say that, when you make your ordinance, you got to make sure that you include the 1% WALA tax, please.
Could the city charge 3 and pay back to you 1% of it?
Well, I tell you,
Or
as a
just
group,
maybe-
we're actually going to make a move, and we're going to increase our 1% that's been around since '97, and we want to increase that starting January 1st of 2024 to 3%.
That would give you more marketing money. That's where it goes.
Right, exactly.
Marketing.
It goes to market the Cross Lake and Whitefish area.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you because I was going to have a family reunion here this next summer, and every lodge was completely booked.
Yeah,
A year out.
Right, and
so-
I get phone calls, and it's
Right.
nice to say, they're like, well, do you know any?
Right.
I get big groups, and I'm like, I think you're a VRBO situation. And they said, well, do you know where to find them? And I have 12 of them on this whitefish.org, so I can say, go to whitefish.org, there's 12 of them. There's 180 some other ones out there who could be getting marketing. That's not even their dollars. You collect it from your customer. It's maddening that I've been painted as a bad guy over the years because I've been trying to get this done to market the area, number one. And number two, it's so simple. It's safety. It's protecting our customers who come to Cross Lake. It's the easiest thing in the world, so.
Are you listed on the Cross Lake website?
On this whitefish.org website? Yes, all the resorts are, yes.
But I mean the WALA,
Yes.
okay.
That's what I was referencing before when I was asking about the tax. that I
Yeah,
knew
like
that
how
there
many
was
people,
supposed-
like I said, we have a roughly, I'm
You have
saying
12.
12, there could be 14. I'm guessing there's about 12. And it's like I said, it's mad. Those people, we have a fall meeting where we take everybody to dinner. And we had 3 VRBO couples join us last year, and they had a great time. They're great people. But we could have so much more marketing dollars. And the fact that this has been a state law since '97 and everybody's doing all this stuff, and I've left my telephone number, I've left it on so many vehicles of people that I know are VRBO owners, and
How's the return? How's the response?
they don't call. They don't call. And some of them are wonderful people. My son had somebody coach my son's football team this fall. Wonderful man. But I know he's also got 4 VRBOs and he's not on my website,
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
What's the deterrent? Why,
Why do they not do it? They think
don't have a
they think it comes out of their
$1,500
profit. I think they think it comes out of their profit, not understanding that it's something that you actually collect on top of whatever the taxes are. You just add another 1%.
and do you have built-in ordinances within, if they belong to your WALA, or they?
We had a group recently who went almost 3 years, somebody in Cross Lake, and then we had to get the city of Cross Lake involved, and they were either going to have to pay twice the amount that they owed us, or they were going to be shut down. And within 24 hours, they paid us what they owed us. It's a real thing.
Yeah. Okay, Tim,
Thanks.
thanks. We got a couple on, or Chip, come on up. We got Mike. Go ahead.
Okay, I appreciate everybody's comments. I'm not for or against VRBOs, but one thing that you have to consider, this is more of a public type thing. There's a lot of families that are pretty obnoxious that have cabins up here. So you can't just say, oh, the VRBO is the problem. Because I have neighbors that have 50,000 people there every weekend, and it's obnoxious.
Good point.
Okay, so you can't just pick on VRBOs because it is, everybody has a cabin, has family up a lot. there's 10, 15 cars, you know, so it's not necessarily VRBOs. I'm just making that point. Did you have any questions on this since I missed, I was on a medical, sorry? No?
We all thought it was great.
Okay. Yeah, so when we talked about agent, is that meaning a property manager? When you guys were talking to agent, to Mr. Fish?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's what
Property
we're
manager,
talking about.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, no questions for me now?
Chip, professional property manager.
right.
Okay. Because anybody can stand up and say they're a manager.
And just to consider, Chip, that there are some good operators out here, and we know them, you know, some people
yeah.
who really
Oh,
take
for
it
sure.
seriously.
Yep.
So maybe we should have something in there that says, if you get 2 complaints against you, then you got to
Yeah.
switch. But, you know, give them,
That's in
give them
there.
the chance.
There, yep.
It's in there.
All right, I didn't see that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. I don't know, it's very,
Yes.
it's on the website, it's very, very rough.
Okay, we got Mike, and we got a couple people online, so this is gonna be a long meeting, folks. Sorry.
Sorry. I think everybody needs to be heard, I think, right?
Yeah.
Shout out to Tim and Walla, great organization. Mike Stone, live in Cross Lake, also own Crosswoods Golf Course and Whistling Wolf Mini Golf, so kind of representing hopefully the business community a little bit, or at least some perspective. Just a show of hands, who's lived up here since the 70s? No, I mean, of you guys.
Oh, none. 2 back there.
Okay, so I think
sorry.
kind of a historical perspective is really important for, you know, I'm kind of in the middle of this whole thing too. You know, I mean, we benefit from that, but we also have members that are single-family owners. I would say like the 40s through the 70s was kind of the golden age of resorts up in this area. And prior decisions have consequences. 70s into the 80s, property values rose, a lot of the resorts disbanded, they were allowed to be zoned as single-family residences. We probably have, you know, I don't know, I'm just guessing, probably 1/10 of the number of resorts that we used to have in the area. There's always been a demand for transient tourism in this area, okay? You cannot shut the door on transient tourism. So it's basically shifted from, you know, so we allowed all those resorts to go by the wayside, still had all that pent-up demand. Kind of in the 80s and the 90s were really doldrums up here as far as growth. And then all of a sudden the internet hit, and there was, you know, I mean, I used to run a short-term rental back in the early 2000s and marketed on VRBO before it is what it is today. But and then now we've seen that growth. So we basically kind of just filled a demand that was there because we eliminated all those resorts. I mean, I'd much rather go back to the way the resorts were. They were the outlet for the family reunions, the parties, all that good stuff that still used to happen on the lakes. But now it's, you know, I mean, I feel for the single family owners. I mean, I wouldn't want to live next to but anyway, I just thought that historical perspective from the business community, like our business, we're the second oldest business next to CNC in Cross Lake. So we've seen the changes. Used to be that over half the license plates in our parking lot were from out of state. You know, so I mean, we were a destination area. We depend, you know, that transient tourism is our lifeblood. And you talk to any business person out here, and probably, you know, again, we saw great business through the 70s, 80s and 90s was okay, and then started the 2000s when we started getting that transient tourism again through rentals, things picked up. But I just want to make sure you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think, you know, smart regulations are important, and we want to keep the quality of life here that we all enjoy, so.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mike. Yeah, let's just give them a shot. Go ahead. What do you got?
Nothing.
Go.
No, I just said, do you want me to read that stuff? Because you're gonna pause for that.
There's a couple of people here that want to talk. Go ahead, TJ.
They just want their, so that's why I was saying, do you want me to read them publicly?
Please.
Okay. So it looks like Lila says, my wife and I I think that's what it says. my wife and I purchased a second home in Cross Lake for short-term rental and had been licensed through Crow Wing County. We take so much pride in our property and who we decide to share that with. There are some very big generalizations that have been referenced by non-subject matter experts. Regulations are good to uphold quality, but you need the checks and balances. Listening to two individuals is not due diligence to establish ordinances. The fact that you could have a permanent resident as a neighbor, or a permanent resident as a neighbor, that is terrible, and what would you do about that? The next comment is Martha. Agreed, we know specifically of people in other communities who were forced to sell due to new restrictive ordinances, and the new neighbors who moved in were very loud every weekend, so the neighbors who complain now have much more louder permanent neighbors.
Yeah. You can't control your neighbors, you can't control your kids a lot of the times, but you could have something to say about the VRBO next door. Come on, Clay.
I'm Clay Porter. I live here in Cross Lake permanently. Real quick, I've read the proposed ordinance by Chip. I think it's very rational, well-written, well-balanced, takes into account all the things that I think you're trying to achieve. You've been trying to do this for some time, Dave. I agree with everything Joe said about what we're doing here. And I think there are some fine points you might want to look at. But I think you need to do something because it's the Wild West right now. So that's all I got to say.
Thanks, Clay. Mike, come on up.
I appreciate it. I certainly don't want to overstay my welcome tonight, but I want to mention just a few things. By the way, how I work, when my company works, my bookkeeper actually collects that 1% throughout the year and then pays it back to the owner at the end of the year because they've got to pay his quarterly. So we do pay that. I'm a strong believer in what he does. I think that's phenomenal. I want to mention, I wanted to add something, and I don't know if it'd work for you guys, but you know, in Aiken County, to address the permitting issue and the zoning issue, every license I get, they have to get a conditional use permit. And I have to go in front of the board, much like this, for every single license. And it's been a beautiful learning curve. Sometimes I'll show up, and with no exaggeration, there'll be 10 to 15 neighbors to argue that their neighbor can't VRBO. And not only have I never gotten a permit, I've never had a neighbor that wasn't satisfied. Because once they understand, I'll give you just a super quick example. One of the last ones I put up was on a private road. The guy at the end of the road was disabled and had an electric wheelchair, and all the neighbors were, what about the traffic? And what about, you know, people running four-wheelers, et cetera? And I changed the rules, the house rules, to accommodate the neighbors until they were comfortable. So maybe it would be a process where the neighbors can come and say, hey, this is what we're concerned about, maybe via email or something. And the person that has the property would have to hear out their neighbors and say, we understand that. But certainly I've heard the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to VRBOs. I'm not arguing in any way, shape, or form that people haven't had bad experiences. But what he's suggesting, what the Chip is suggesting, is basically what happens in Aiken, which is 2 per bedroom plus 1. I too have been through many, many trainings all around the country over the years. I'm very familiar with what's going on in other places in the country, and I think what Crow Wing had was fair, and we're probably not going to necessarily get that in the end, but I mean, at least 2 per bedroom, I think it's fair. And all my marketing says no parties, no events, etc. But the way to really limit that is to make it very clear, 2 per bedroom plus 1, if that's what you guys decide. But daytime guests can never exceed nighttime guests. So if you've got 8 people sleeping there, an additional 8 people could show up, but they have to be off the property by nightfall. My neighbors have my rental agreement. They know the rules. My guests know, my neighbors know the rules. And they're only allowed 1 car per bedroom. So if you got a 3-bedroom house and there's 5 cars, just this weekend I had a situation where it was a 3-bedroom house and they had 2 extra cars they wanted to park, and I told them no. You can't park on a public street, and I can't have 5 cars out there because my neighbors know it's against the rules. It's 1 car per house. So these rules do prevent the type of issues that we have when things get out of hand and people have parties. And by the way, my rental agreement, which I'd share with anyone right now, not only talks about loud music, it talks about public profanity. It says many of my neighbors have small children, and if we get a call of foul language in the yard, it's a $250 fine directly on our credit card on file. We can also require noise meters, which automatically, you know, say if the decibels are that high. I'm just saying there are solutions to all this, and I appreciate the opportunity to maybe be in an ongoing conversation.
Can you leave a copy of that with us?
I've got multiple copies here also.
Hey, Mike, I have a quick question. The two people per bedroom I think is great, but just like this lady has a question on the Zoom. For 2 people, or what does it say? For the 2 guests per bedroom restriction, what about bunk beds or bunk rooms? What is the deal with that?
I'll be really honest, that's my argument. You know, and we got our way with, you know, with crowing years ago, and I got 4 people per bedroom, and we were like, woohoo, you know? So crowing's gone down to 3 people per bedroom. Aiken's 2 people per bedroom. So I certainly will graciously accept whatever you guys will give me. But the truth is, there are houses, normally, to be honest, when I'm looking at a VRBO, I'm asking myself, is it a 1, 2, or 3 family VRBO? And you've always got a master bedroom and maybe another bedroom with a queen. But yeah, you have a 3rd bedroom with double bunks for the kids, right? So I can live with 2 people per bedroom plus 1. I do that in Aiken and now Mille Lacs. I think 3 people per bedroom is fair, but someone could argue that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll read this one. This one is from Mary. She says, "Hi, my name is Mary Goman. I am the one that lives next to the VRBO that has been the issue. My kids get on the bus every day. They attend Pequot Lakes Public Schools. They have bedrooms on that side of the house. My daughter came up to me last summer telling me the neighbors, aka renters, said the F word. It doesn't feel like we are ever home because of the activities. Few questions. What happens when renters do violate? Are they forced to leave? What happens when where are we? What happens when they lie? And what happens when they lie and say that it's their family and not renters? And then who is documenting this? I woke up at 5 a.m. to take pictures of the 13 to 15 cars last summer. When the renters see someone pull in, they immediately quiet down and then get loud again. I'm 42, I am a mom, and I work full time. I can't be outside taking secret pictures of these. Let's see. Of these people, I just asked the city to think of the families first and then the renters. Rules won't stop renting. Rules won't stop the owner's profits. Rules will protect the families that live here." Which I think is a solid point.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I mean, why don't you pull this off to a committee or something, Dave? Because we're spending a lot of time talking about it. It's got a lot of good input, but you only have a few folks' input, not everybody.
No, we've had committees for years.
Yeah, well.
I mean, we have.
Yeah. Set a date and move forward.
So, and let's do it by motion. So I'm going to make a motion. I think, go ahead, Mark. I don't think so.
We've been listening to people talk about how they can set ordinances to control all these things. I've been through a similar circus next to my house. It's on police record that my dog was threatened to be shot. The neighbors trespassed on my lawn and my properties. Eric can testify to the fact that I've had nothing but hassles. Finally, that went to court, district court, and they were told to abide by the ordinance. That's the first enforcement of the ordinance I've seen. I've heard nobody say anything about how you're going to enforce the restrictive ordinances you're going to write. They're worthless unless you put teeth in them that Dave was talking about. You got to have somebody on with a job that's assigned to go out and write enforceable citations. I'm guessing that's our police department. They got enough to do. You got to have somebody to do this. Otherwise, you're going to have these people in these VRBOs laughing at you behind your back or to your face. They're not going to listen to your ordinances. And by the time you catch them doing this stuff, they're gone. Those renters are gone and the next bunch is out. And I know I've got basically the same thing next to my house. It's not a VRBO, but it's 7 members or 7 family branches of a family. And it's a circus every weekend when a bunch move in and a bunch move out and a bunch move in and a bunch move out, and there's hollering and whooping. And I pay a hell of a lot of taxes up here to have a quiet existence.
and it doesn't exist without ordinances with teeth in them that somebody is going to be willing to and able to enforce.
Thank
I
you,
would like
Mark.
to see something in
That's what we're
there.
going to try to do. Our best attempt. So I want to make a motion that does nothing other than encourage staff to pursue this and come back next month. And Brad, I'd like you to be involved. Chip, obviously. Peter, I don't know if you want to be. If you want to include Mr. Fish in it, good. But I think you've heard what the people want here, correct? Brad, I mean, you get the gist of it?
We should
I've heard a lot of
encourage.
comments, but I care more about the comments of you five. I've heard of some of that too, but that's where I want the feedback, not so much from the public. The council might want council feedback or public feedback to make your own opinion, but as city attorney, I want only your feedback. I don't really care what, no offense, but,
Yeah,
you know.
okay. Well, where's my little sheet? I'll start with that one. $500 licensing fee. I don't want this to cost the taxpayers a nickel, any of this enforcement, anything. So $500 license, I'd like the VRBO number posted on the road, right by their fire number, somehow. So everybody driving by knows that's a VRBO. And they know if there's something going on, it's not. 3% city tax. Again, that's going to create revenue that's going to help support the enforcement of this. Inspections, I'm sure Chip covered all that. However, we phase that broker manager into it is a good idea. I think the good operators should certainly be given a chance.
Those are 5 or 6 points. Does anybody in the council disagree with that, or is that, do all you think similar to what Dave was talking about?
I agree with what he said, but I want the tax added into it, that they have to collect it and they have to forward it appropriately, okay?
The lodging tax one?
Correct.
And,
Go ahead.
well, I personally think the penalty should be pretty severe if, yeah, I mean, if there 1 or 2 violations and you lose your license. I mean, you've got to make it so difficult for people to violate the ordinances that they'll be forced to follow those.
And I heard the general comment of some of the council that you've read Chip's draft, and you all know maybe it's a rough draft, but you like the spirit of it, or it's on the right direction, right?
Yes.
That's really enough for Chip and I, and that's for us as a committee to.
Look at it as if there's a potential for a criminal penalty to go into there as well. Because I think if you don't add the criminal penalty in, some people don't care. They'll pay the $500 fine and not blink an eye. Okay?
I feel like it's a privilege for someone to be able to operate a VRBO in our beautiful community, and so the price should be high and the penalty should be high if they violate the ordinances.
And I agree with Dave on moving this along.
Yeah, so let's make it a motion.
I think Eric's
Somebody,
got something quick.
Mayor, I wasn't mentioned in this committee, but right now, our noise ordinance, we have other ordinances that we're going to have to go through and change. Like our noise ordinance right now is an administrative fine and only goes to the property owner. And it is, you're cited after multiple offenses. So, you know, do we cite the homeowner? Do we, I mean, all these things enforcement-wise have to go into this. And yeah, I see 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't think Pete's coming out to talk to the people about how many people are there.
The enforcement, how we're going to enforce it is a big part of it.
It's going to be a huge part. And how do you go about making sure that doesn't cost the citizens money when the police department's out there with who knows how many different short-term rentals we have in town right now.
Well, you have to make the fine large enough that it would compensate for it.
All right, so now you need a board to enforce that fine because administrative fines haven't been real successful as far as I know over the years here. So that's, you know, something else that either you guys take care of it or something else. So I mean, it just doesn't stop at the ordinance.
I agree with you, Eric. And this is part of what needs to be developed and put before so we do understand as a collective group.
So then you got to.
Well, I'm sure we called out for noise ordinance without it being a VRBO.
You want to ride with my guys?
No, I'm just saying, I think you're probably called out.
Oh, yeah.
For other than, I'm not saying that that's the only
Right.
thing you call out.
But the problem
Noise
is,
ordinance.
as Mike made a comment about, 3 cars being in the lot or in the driveway instead of 2, how are we to enforce that?
Right.
And, that type of thing. So, or the amount of people that are actually at the house.
But then if they have the ID, they can call the city office and get the contact information.
That's why
Where-
that
where's it?
ID on the driveway is important, I think.
Well, they're not going to be contacting the city, they'd be contacting the manager of the property.
If they have one. Otherwise, it'll be on the.
They're gonna need
their
one.
license. It's going to be on their license.
Well, I guess,
Yeah.
the 2 strikes and that. Right, exactly.
So there's a motion. Did you second that? Any other discussion on it? I think you get the gist of it, right?
I definitely get the gist of it, and if you pass the motion, I'm gonna ask Shar to help me, do a little, whatever committee heads wanna be on that, meet sometime and physically here at council, the council chambers to go over.
I think Eric should be on that.
Well, and if Tim Berg wants, or whoever, I mean, if that's what a committee is.
Shar, I was saying,
people
I would
need to be
invite
on
all the
that.
department heads and the ones that wanna come, we'll figure out a way to make it happen.
I think Shar should be there to take minutes.
Okay,
Let's move
motion
on.
second. All in favor, we gotta move on.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Come back next month with something, huh? Oh, boy, we got an hour and 10 minutes into that.
Well, it's an important issue, so.
Tim, I think you're up next, aren't you? Or Phil, or who, Tim?
I'll tee it up and then I'll have
Good.
Jay take over. Good evening, everyone, Mayor and Council. We are back again, and just when I thought we had the most controversial subject in town, a lot of robust discussion around this. It's actually, so. We're back here again. We're back here again as a follow-up to the November public meeting where I made a commitment to come back and talk about a 4-way stop and a couple other questions that came up. And so to follow through with that commitment, we asked Jake Bongard from the traffic engineer from Bolton and Mink to come back and present on a very narrow topic. We could blow this up and double, triple the VRBO discussion,
You got
honestly.
7 more minutes.
Okay, so we'd like to, there is a lot more, there's a lot more to talk about this, but we just want to make sure that we're fulfilling that commitment that I made back in November. And so just, the recommendation is still a roundabout right now. We're working through some of the details of that. We're also working through some pedestrian accommodations that have been requested. It's not ready yet, so we're here for a very specific thing to talk about that, and we'll try to keep it on point as much as we can. Okay?
Okay.
So Jake Bongard?
Welcome, Jake.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, members of the council. Yeah, like Tim mentioned, I could talk for quite a while on this, so I'll try to keep it brief, but let me bring the presentation up here. All right, great. So I just want to start off and I'll do a quick overview, and I guess I just want to say off the bat that I greatly appreciate all the feedback we've received on this project. I know it's caused me to kind of relook at our process. I know I've talked with folks from MnDOT Traffic, or Office of Traffic Safety, Ped and Bike, all the other communities I work with, just try to confirm and reaffirm the solutions that we're proposing out here, that they're the correct ones and they're the best ones for the community. So just kind of jumping in, I think we all know projects extend, so really focusing on the 3 and 66 intersection today, but as Tim mentioned, there are future pedestrian improvements planned up to Bald Eagle Trail and also over to Pioneer Drive that will complement the corridor and the pedestrian facilities along it. We are currently in the study preliminary design type phase of the project, working towards that 2024 construction project still. And from a funding wise for the project, there is funds available to help contribute to the pedestrian facilities being constructed along 66 and 3 with $610,000 awarded through the Transportation Alternatives Program, and there also is dollars available for an intersection improvement at 3 and 66 with $850,000 awarded through the Eastern Federal Lands Access Program. So just quickly with the intersection, just to get everybody up to speed again. So speed limit out here is 35 miles per hour. Just south of the intersection, it's 45 miles per hour. Average speeds of people approaching from the south is 36, 37 miles per hour. So people are driving approximately what the speed limit is out here. The conditions at the intersection are, it's kind of that suburban, urban section, but one of the interesting things, it is kind of a transition area from the rural section coming in from the south. So this does serve as somewhat of a gateway to town as you enter in from the south. It is currently that side street stop control. And as you look at traffic, I won't get into it, but summer traffic does meet warrants just from a volume perspective for additional traffic control. So looking, the volumes out here, the distribution and kind of share of it does warrant a potential signal or always stop at the intersection. So that does vary by time of year. Clearly, it's a unique community that there's a lot more traffic up here clearly during the summer months. So in the winter months and then off-peak conditions, those volumes aren't quite as high. So the distribution of traffic isn't necessarily meeting those warrants. From a marked pedestrian crossing perspective, there is one across the north and the east leg, and that rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is shown on the top right, is included out there so people can walk up, press the button, and then cross the road. And just talking with community members, there are compliance issues noted. So overall, intersection appears to be operating safely, only 3 crashes over the past 5 years. But we have heard concerns of screeching brakes and people not quite feeling safe after they press the button that someone is going to cross or actually stop for them when they're looking to cross the road. And with that, there is a lot of pedestrian traffic out there currently with the beach, with the Army Corps campground, with all the great facilities on the west side and all of the commercial and gas station and Andy's on the east side of the road. So it's a busy intersection. And with the introduction of the National Loon Center coming in 2024, it's just going to get busier. So there's people coming in and out, higher pedestrian activity clearly, and it's just going to become a more complicated intersection to navigate. So just looking at corridor characteristics, so coming from the south, so it is that kind of rural to suburban, urban transition area. You can see approach, everybody's driven this many times. From a visibility standpoint, we like to look at stopping site distance just so you do know what you're approaching and you can come to a stop if you need to. So looking at this, it is about a 40 mile per hour stopping distance that you're looking at right here. So that's how long it would take you to see something, hit your brakes and come to a reasonable stop. So it is doable out here, but it is a little bit of an unconventional condition when you're coming up from the south. And just one thing to note too, so if you're looking really that whole segment from the south from the Cassav 3-4 intersection to the north, currently there aren't any hard stops. You don't see any stop signs along that corridor as you transition through. There may be, I believe there's some improvements coming to the corridor that'll introduce some slowing along it, but it is, a hard stop sign would be a different view, I guess, for people that are kind of visitors to the area or new to the area. So just want to keep that in consideration. Coming from the north, same thing, there are also no stops all the way up to Cassav 1 to the north. So this is more so that suburban, urban environment, and this would be the condition for if you're traveling 35 miles per hour southbound into the intersection, this is what you would see. So clean sight lines, more urban feel, more pedestrian activity, more accesses, so just more going on. So there's probably more awareness when you're pulling up to the intersection from this side. And we're going to focus on the intersection here today at 3 and 66, but I just want to talk a little bit about the conditions to the north. So it is that 4 to 5 lane typical section with the turn lanes, the right turn lanes, the left turn lanes through here, some of the added lanes as you come through the intersection. That existing trail on the west side of the road, and as we talked, there will be some more trail sidewalk facilities introduced on the east side of the road. And mid-block crossings along here are common today. So those dots on the left side of the screen are kind of the park access points currently. And with that campground on the west side, all the vacationers traffic, there's a large, like I mentioned, large amount of pedestrians and bicyclists. And on the east side, bar, grill, convenience store, coffee shop. So it does introduce a desire to walk across the road. So at future meetings, like Tim mentioned, we are going to talk more about these pedestrian facilities and what is introduced. But we want to talk about driver speed as you proceed through the intersection as well, and being able to slow traffic down as you enter into town and try to create a safer environment, not only at this intersection, but perpetuate that condition north of the intersection as well. So as Tim mentioned, I think at the open house that we had back in November, we showed this exact slide. The do nothing, the always stop, the traffic signal, and the roundabout. And I think as part of this, we quickly noted that the always stop does not meet project goals. And I know we had some information on boards, but just didn't get to fully talk through that. And we, again, revisit a little bit and wanted to chat in a little more detail on that always stop today. So the three options that we looked at as part of the analysis was that existing condition. And just hitting on pedestrian safety right now, so that existing condition has a 60-plus foot crossing distance, one-stage crossing. So a lot of pedestrian exposure there, a lot of lanes to cross, a lot of driver-pedestrian interaction with that one. As we looked at the traffic signal option, we still did not introduce a median on the north side just because of the need to provide turn lanes at that intersection, just with the possibility of that higher speed through movement coming through the intersection. The need for turn lanes both left and right is still there just because you don't want people slowing down in the through lane and causing a potential rear end crash. So that's why that maintained there. We did introduce a little bit of a bump out on the east side of the road. So that is a 48-foot crossing distance for the traffic signal. The always stop, we took a step back from what was shown at that open house and introduced a median across the north leg of the intersection. So as you can see there, it's pretty little, but instead of having that full left through right, 3 lanes of traffic approaching, it's a left and a through right. So it's a shared movement for the through movement and the right turn going into the campground, just because everybody's coming to a stop at that intersection on approach, and that volume is not that great entering into the campground. It makes it a more feasible option in order to do that. So that same condition is for that northbound as well, with the through left and the right turn movement separated out. So that condition would be 18 to 26 foot crossing distance, so it's better. There's that protected median in the middle just to make that a 2-stage crossing for pedestrians as well, and then that always stop is shown. And then we also discussed the roundabout, and again, similarly, it's 18 to 20 foot crossing distance, 2 stages, and then that's 1 lane entering and 1 lane exiting, essentially from each direction with that one, which is a little bit different with the always stop. It would be 2 lanes entering and 1 lane exiting, so just a little bit of a difference there, but crossing distance are much more similar and much more reasonable than that existing 60-foot crossing. So I wanted to dig into the pedestrian safety aspect of this and just talk through how we were kind of weighing these different options, and open to interpretation a little bit here, but wanted to talk through what our assumptions are. So with the, just some higher points here, so talking initial familiarity, so comparing these 3 different options from a pedestrian safety standpoint with the LED enhanced stop sign, the traffic signal, and the roundabout. So the check mark means that it meets measures per our analysis, and the faded one means it partially does, and if it's not there, it means it doesn't meet measures. So from an initial familiarity standpoint, we know everybody knows what a stop sign is, what a traffic signal is. They know how to drive them. It's a pretty direct message on how to navigate those. But the roundabout is a little bit newer still, can be a little bit more uncomfortable. I know they're coming up all over the place, and in Nisswa and Baxter and Breezy Point and all over the place. So they are around, but there isn't quite that comfort level there. So the little asterisk there is it's going to get there. People are going to get more comfortable with roundabouts, and I know in cities and counties where we've put roundabouts in the past where there is some concerns of how people will drive them and how they'll operate and how safe they'll be. A lot of times after the fact, there is acceptance of them. There is interest, and people like them at the end of the day. So that's why that's identified as that. From a conflict point standpoint, so jumping into that, and that's one of the biggest proponents for a roundabout is the amount of conflicts between vehicles. So if you look at any time you have an interaction between a driver and a pedestrian, it's a chance for a crash. And as you look at crash statistics and which ones are safer than others, that's why the roundabout oftentimes moves to the top, both for pedestrian and driver safety. So what's up here is the conventional intersection is at the left. So every square is a vehicle to person conflict point. So that's every time a vehicle crosses a person. And then the dot is the vehicle to vehicle. So when you have all the different turn lanes and different movements introduced, there's a lot more opportunities for vehicles to cross and crashes to occur. So if you look at a conventional intersection that has 32 vehicle-to-vehicle conflict points and 24 vehicle-to-person, the roundabout is a much cleaner operation, it's just the way people navigate it. It's one on entry and one on exit, essentially, for both roundabout, or for both vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-person. So what a roundabout also does too is it eliminates the high-severity conflict points, so like the T-bone crashes, the right angles, the left turns, where you have potential for a high-speed movement to come in and to hit another vehicle broadside. So the roundabout does a nice job where it just does more of the merging accidents if they do occur. So from a conflict point perspective, with the stop sign, that center median is introduced, so they're all still there, but it is a safer environment for someone trying to cross here because it is that two-stage crossing. But the signal is wide open, and then the roundabout clearly has the fewest there. From a driver's speed perspective, the stop sign it's going to stop. It's going to request that every vehicle stops at the intersection, right? Which is typically a benefit. One of the things that a concern, and you can see this in news stories and things like that, that if you do have driver complacency, if someone doesn't acknowledge that the sign is there, they do have the potential just to blow through at still that high speed. You're not necessarily engineering a lower speed limit, and we'll talk about traffic calming for the rest of the corridor too, and being able to create elements to encourage people to slow down or require them to slow down. A stop sign does from an enforcement standpoint where it tells them to, but it doesn't force them to. So overall driver speeds are expected clearly to be greatly reduced with that, but there are instances where someone misses it even if it's an LED stop sign and blows through it, and with that there's then more confidence from those approaching from the side streets or crossing at the intersection that they're safe when in all reality they may not be. From a traffic signal perspective, it keeps people moving, right? I think you have that free flow on the main line. If you get a green light, you can proceed through at the 37 miles per hour that people do today. So that's maintaining existing speeds. And the roundabout would be designed to about a 20 to 25 mile per hour design speed through the intersection. So it would engineer the slower speed through here. And just from a statistics standpoint with driver speeds, and this is from MnDOT, if you look at driver speeds, so if you're at that 20 to 25 miles per hour, pedestrians hit at a speed have a 13% likelihood of a fatality at the 20 mile per hour. If you go up to the 30 to 40 miles per hour, you can see those statistics increase to 40 to 73% fatality rate when you're hit at a higher speed. So again, I think the stop sign would do a nice job of slowing people down, but there are instances where that may not necessarily occur. From a pedestrian wait time standpoint, so again, I think most times you walk up to a stop sign, you can just cross the road. You have the right of way. That's also the case with the roundabout. We know that sometimes people won't stop for someone initially trying to cross at a roundabout. Average compliance rates are 80+% though. And there's just more, I guess, awareness from a pedestrian in trying to cross a roundabout. So it's all about stopping, making sure that vehicle stops for you, and then navigating to the center median island, and then making sure that vehicle stops in the other direction, and then navigating to the other side of it. So both of those operate very well. From the signal perspective, you press the button and you have to wait for your green light to come up. So it's going to come, but if you're impatient, you can run across, and you're not necessarily protected in that instance. Driver line of sight, kind of a nuanced thing, but as you approach a traffic signal, you're oftentimes looking up to see what that indication, if it's red or yellow or green, and then your eyes need to come back down at a pedestrian level. So oftentimes you're at a different level when you're approaching that intersection. So both that stop sign and both stop sign and roundabout do a nice job of keeping your line of sight just at that pedestrian level. driver pedestrian expectations. And this is where the condition enforced by, I guess, the stop sign and the roundabout, or the traffic signal roundabout, it's a little more blatant, just in more in your face on what your operations need to be at the intersection. So the roundabout uses engineering. It has advanced signage, lighting, and geometry to help navigate you around that feature at a slower speed. The signal's overhead lights. It's very in your face that you need to stop. The stop sign, again, I think it could be there, but one of the concerns is that you could just miss it, right? It's not as robust as these other treatments. And if there is some complacency, or you have vacationer traffic that isn't used to this situation, that you could have an issue with that. And then the last one is just driver pedestrian decision making. So it's people drive what they want to drive, right? And I think some people don't pay attention. So all of these have pros and cons. You can drive it the correct way and you can drive it a wrong way. So they all have issues. So none of these are perfect. No traffic control is perfect because crashes are random. And people drive the way they drive. So that's kind of the quick snapshot overview from a pedestrian safety perspective. And I know I'm moving fast, so if there are questions, please slow me down and ask them.
Can you go back to that conflict points on conventional?
Yep.
Yeah, right there. What is a conventional intersection? I'm a little confused with that drawing.
So that's like that's your signal or your always stop. So if you look at like these treatments, if you see the left through and the right turn lane, so you can have someone making a left turn and then at the same time have someone crossing you southbound. So it's really just every driver interaction. So when you have a left turn movement, you have someone crossing this way, you have someone crossing this way. Really it's just, and if you have someone making a right turn, they're crossing multiple pedestrians as well. So it's kind of all the movements that can occur at an intersection. With a roundabout, you can literally just drive one way and you can just cross at one location. So it cleans it up. And just a couple of additional considerations beyond the pedestrian safety. Just the peak versus off-peak conditions. So vehicle pedestrian capacity. So the roundabout, it is, compared to the always stop, it does handle more robust capacity. So given the volumes that are out there today, we had expected to handle upwards of like twice as much traffic that's out there. So as additional pedestrians are out there during peak times, or the Loon Center has an event, or even during Labor Day, things like that, we expect the roundabout to be able to manage higher traffic levels than what the always stop would be, just because it keeps traffic moving as opposed to stopping every single one. Vehicle speeds, again, I think the roundabout would, it just controls speeds through engineering. The always stop as well would control speeds, but oftentimes when you approach, just given compliance to, we've all driven up to a stop sign when there isn't anybody around and you do the little bit of a toe tap and drive through it. And up here in Cross Lake, given the seasonality of some of the traffic up here, there is many times of the year where it's not going to be overly busy if it's the winter months or at night. And you could drive through 19 times and there's no cross streets when you're going through, but that 20th time if somebody's there, you may not be expecting it and you could have an issue with that. And then from an overall safety perspective, yeah, the roundabout does a really nice job with just normal crashes, and then really with the severe crashes, it just requires everybody to slow down and it eliminates those right angles. Vehicle emissions and ambient noise, so it's really just a roundabout keeps traffic going. So during any times of day, it just keeps them moving. So at night, you may have vehicles still continuing to come to a stop. And being next to a campground, we're cognizant of the noise as well. Just with every vehicle stopping and then accelerating after the fact, it would be a louder intersection than what a roundabout would be. And then with the emission standpoint too, just keeping traffic moving, doesn't have as much starting and stopping again, which uses less gas and creates less emissions. From a stormwater quality opportunities, just introduces a new condition to the intersection, maybe some additional green space to modify and improve upon what's out there today. streetscaping, landscaping, aesthetics, just showing those bottom pictures. So that's the Nisswa roundabout on the left side there, just showing that there are some opportunities to create some aesthetics near the intersection, some green space, and just make it look a little bit more appealing than what a stop sign may be. And then just, there's multiple case studies and safety studies out there on the benefits of roundabouts. So if there's any interest in those, I definitely won't go through them right now, but they're available if anybody's interested. And then just really quickly, I wanted to hit on traffic calming. So that is something beyond the intersection that's going to be looked at really for the whole corridor that's part of this project. And traffic calming is a combination of mainly physical measures that reduce the negative effects of motor vehicle use, alter driver behavior, and improve conditions for non-motorized street users. So that's at right, that's not a final concept by any means, but just introducing bump outs, trees, additional green space, on-street parking, any of those elements that really make it feel a little bit smaller, a little bit more of an urban environment where people aren't comfortable driving so fast necessarily. It just creates more of a tighter feel and slows traffic down through engineering and environment.
Is that part of your intention to have those bump outs and vegetation?
All of that's going to be explored. Bump outs are being explored at different locations and center medians. That's by no means a final concept or even a draft concept that was pulled from something that was previously done. But yeah, we're going to look for opportunities to improve pedestrian safety at key crossing locations and introduce landscaping and streetscaping as available. And then, yeah, just in general, traffic calming objectives include achieving slower speeds, which if you have people kind of crossing at different locations or at some of these mid-block or uncontrolled intersections, slowing speeds is always a great thing. Reducing collisions, frequency, and severity, increasing the safety and the perception of safety for non-motorized users of the street, reducing the overall need for police enforcement if people are just naturally driving slower because of environment, enhancing the street environment, so adding boulevards or trees, things like that, encouraging water infiltration into the ground, just more green space allows that, and increasing access for all modes of transportation. So really just creating a corridor that's representative of all modes of travel instead of just drivers and vehicle traffic. And that's it. So any questions? I think like Tim mentioned, I think from the traffic calming aspect for the greater corridor pedestrian, that'll be another time, but that is something that will be reviewed here.
I just have, that's a pretty broad time frame, April 2023 to April 2024 for the design to be finalized. Is that as specific as you can be right now?
So that's kind of the duration. It could take up to a year. So we plan to have a pretty good concept here within the next few months that we could kind of continue to move forward with, but just with the final design process of really dialing in the design and figuring out construction impacts, putting plans together, getting permit approvals and things like that. It takes a while to get everything in order.
Do you have any kind of projection on how long after construction begins that it will be completed?
We haven't taken a deep look at construction staging.
Tim told me about 3 weeks.
Oh, perfect. All right, well.
Leave it alone, Tim, leave it alone.
No, just real quickly on that. We just are about to let the project down here 3 and 11. That's a roundabout, will be constructed this year. Learning from the hard lessons that we saw play out here in Cross Lake with your project up here, we introduced an incentive to the contractor. And what that does is that changes the conversation. Is the contractor scheming about how to make the 50,000, or are they scheming how to get out of liquidated damages? I would rather have them trying to figure out how they can get it done at a certain time. We put June 29th as the completion date to get the $50,000 incentive down here. And if that is successful, we will apply it here and everywhere else that we have roundabout coming in. So we're paying attention to that, and we're doing our best to try to get people to build it fast.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Jake.
Pat's got a question.
Can I just clear, I need Jake to answer one question. One of the things that in one of our meetings that we had recently, it has to do with pedestrian accommodations that we're talking about. There's bump outs. I have some concepts that we're evaluating in our office. They are on the table, but it's a new concept for us. And we have to balance that with snow plowing and that kind of stuff. So we're going through that process. We've given a couple iterations. But the notion was, hey, you're doing so much pedestrian stuff in town, we don't need an intersection improvement. You're going to be slowing traffic so much that it's going to accomplish the same thing that you're trying to do with the roundabout. Jake, we talked about that. I'd just like you to address that. Are we doing one or the other, or both?
Yeah, and from my perspective, they're complementary improvements. That there's the major conflict that we see is at the 3 and 66 intersection, and as you come in from the south too, it's kind of that change in environment. So I think there is still a big need to improve safety and operations at that actual intersection. And then the goal north of there is to continue to perpetuate that lower speed into and throughout the city. So they do complement one another, where it is a speed check, it is a safe improvement at the actual 3 and 66 intersection. And then anything that happens north of there with trees or bump outs or center medians will just kind of perpetuate that pedestrian safety throughout the rest of the corridor.
So roundabout, we're trying to get people to go down to 25 miles an hour or less. The restrictions we would have to put on 66 to get everybody from Bald Eagle Trail to this intersection, go to 25. You have 2 lanes with 11-foot lanes. So restrictive, people are so uncomfortable that they go that speed. With the traffic going 7,000 to 8,000 cars at the peak of the summer, that will not work. That will absolutely not work. So these are complementary. It's not one or the other, it's both.
What is the posted speed going to be?
30, right now, 35.
And that won't change regardless of what we do with the...
Well, that's an interesting point, because we did talk about that a little bit, and explored that. We will come back and to see what the effects are of these pedestrian, these bump outs, these things that are making people uncomfortable. And we'll do that same speed study that we just did under the new condition. We can build it the way we think we're going to drive it, but people never drive it the way we think it's going to. So it's after the fact. So set the speed limit. If you can go down to 30, I learned this week, but it has to come from that same type of studies, how people are actually using it. Are the measures that we're putting there to make people uncomfortable actually working?
Yeah. Pat, did you have something? It's 18 minutes to 9
Yeah, I just
right
quickly
now.
want to say thanks to you guys for bringing this back here to this so that we could hear some, you did answer a bunch of my questions. And so I thank you for that. I'm not fully convinced of the pedestrian safety at a roundabout yet. So the design, I'm very interested in seeing that. The bump outs, the aesthetic, all that, the feeder from the north, I think slowing down the traffic really would help going into that intersection. I'm not opposed to a roundabout. Pedestrian safety has got to be number one. And I want you to continue what you just said tonight in your designs. So thank you for bringing that here tonight.
You know, and all of this is shaping what we're doing. All these conversations are ending up on paper that we're about.
And that is an awesome point to say about our county engineers and what they're doing and the people who are using the posters and going to the QR code and putting their input in there, and that is being listened to. I would encourage you to update that page though, because it's got old info on it.
It will have this concept. We've been working on it new. We don't want to put something out too early that, you know, you can't live with it. It's coming.
I think Mike's got something. Mike?
Oh, sorry.
Have you guys considered the effect that those bump outs and whatever will have on the go-karts and four-wheelers and stuff that are competing in the traffic lanes?
What is What's county policy for, is it shoulders or?
The county allows them to drive on.
It's the outer right-hand side. So,
Yeah,
we
wow.
came to the city council and we talked specifically about parking. When I'm talking about bump outs and things like that, that's going off of the decision you made to consider consuming some of the parking lane, the 10-foot parking lane that's there. So when that decision was made, it was saying, it will have an effect on ATVs, which are in a parking car, and UTVs. So, it will be a trade-off. It's a trade-off.
And typically the bump outs don't run all the way up to the edge of the lane line either, so there's still
So it's gonna force these other vehicles out into the lane where they're not supposed to be.
No different than what somebody who used the parking lane but a UTV comes by. No different than that.
Okay, Jake, thank you much. Mike, you got a minute and a half, but we got to keep moving here.
I got like 15 seconds.
Okay.
Just did a 6,000 mile trip around the country, mostly the West Coast. Went through, every time I came to a roundabout, I thought about Cross Lake. Roundabouts can make a community very distinctive. I really encourage you guys to keep something in the budget, whether it's the county or the city, to make that a statement of place, like you're arriving in Cross Lake. I think it really, really can make the community.
The VRBO capital of the world.
There you go, there you go.
Just off the top of my head.
So I'm a big proponent of a roundabout in Cross Lake. Hopefully that follows through. The other thing is a community that I used to live in was Stevenson, Washington. It's in the Columbia River Gorge, kind of a touristy community. Used to have wide lanes like we have here now, and they've gone to like pedestrian peninsulas, kind of, and made the road a little narrower. It is just so much more intimate, and traffic goes so much slower through that community. And it's just a nice, homier, small town feeling.
I agree.
So, thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, you guys, thanks a lot. Do appreciate that. Let's move around. Now I'm going to get on the hot seat. Last month, the council gave me permission to go look at some properties for development, so I. I'm gonna get my pen. So what I'm looking at is the long-time future for Cross Lake. We, like VRBOs, have been talking about housing. I gotta look this way, talk to them, and look this way. Okay. Carry it around. We've been talking about housing as long as VRBO's in here, and we need some entry-level workforce, whatever you want to call it, housing. There's an opportunity that came up. Is that on? There's a parcel for sale that's about 50 acres. It's off a wilderness trail. There is really not another route to get up to Highway 1. All these green X's right here is all tax forfeit property. I approached the county, not the commission, but Tim Hool I talked to about it. And to use that long-term for housing is the perfect use that the county would love to see that with. So I don't know what the price of it would be. It would be a very fair price for it. So this property that I've identified here joins that property. There are no other properties. The river comes through here. Everything's private all the way along here. There's one 50-acre chunk there that connects to the county road that we could get up to one sometime. So, and Brad went and talked to him. We won't talk the price of that yet, but he called the guy. He got up, what do you want for the property? He told him that. I went to Anderson Brothers. I talked to the engineer. I talked to surveyors, got some rough numbers. What it's going to cost us, I'm guessing, depending on what the price is, in the $1 million range to develop that 50 acres into about 40 sellable lots. So what my dream would be is that we could offer 40 lots for sale for in the neighborhood of $30,000 each and try to really target an entry-level housing, young families, two-stall garage and a bike leaning against the door. But what that would give us is an access to this tax forfeit land for future. So 20 years from now, there's another 40 or another 80 acres. It's growth for the city. So I'm coming back to you with a chunk of ground that we could pursue. However we develop it, it could be 40, 50 lots, it's 50 acres. We could play with the zoning. The road cost to go from one end to the other without the spur roads on it is about 300 grand. The engineering costs, I'm not sure what they are. The surveying costs are probably 50 or 60,000. So the land cost is a big portion of it. Brad, what was that? What did you find out on that?
675.
675 for the 50 acres. Now, Aaron, you will remember this, and Marcia on the council, when we were offered that 5-acre chunk behind Andy's. I think the price of it was 300,000. The owner offered it to us for 250 and then pulled that back because we delayed. We couldn't come to terms to buy it. So if we could get this property with a road through it for about $1 million, maybe it's $1.2 million, and we had 40 lots, we could have 50 lots in there, sold them in the neighborhood of 30 grand, that's $1.2 million. It's a break even on money. What it does is it gives us 30 or 40 affordable lots for young families to come in and build on. We'd have to put a lot of covenants and restrictions on them. We wouldn't want a builder to come in and buy 10 of them, because comparable lots are selling for $60,000 to $80,000. So my question to the council is do you guys want to pursue this property and get it and fill in the details of how we're going to do it later? My financing for this is we've got $2.5 million of phone company money that is virtually getting no interest on it. Last year, we lost probably 6% value of it with inflation. So we could put some of that money into this, do it. When we sell the lots, it would pay that fund back. Maybe we make some money on it, maybe we wouldn't. But it's going to be a great thing for the city.
Number one, Dave, we are earning interest on that money today. And I realize it's not keeping up with inflation. I agree with that. But when did the city get into the personal a part of this? Because keep in mind, there's an apartment complex coming up. They're asking for a significant amount of give from the city as well. How are we going to tell them? Are we going to tell them no because we got $1 million sitting over here?
I wouldn't say we'd tell them no. 30-some years ago when I moved up here, the city was in the lot sales. They had over where Schaefer Road is. There's that commercial district in there. And the city had those lots for sale, Shar, for $3,000 each? They were $3,000 each, and they were trying to get businesses to come in. It was a commercial lot. You bought them from the city. So the city has done it. There probably is regulation since then that have spurred up.
Yeah.
But
I guess I'm not in favor of the city getting into the real estate business, okay? We have very good developers in this community. We have people that do a good job. And I think you need to go out and find somebody to
But we're never going to
this,
have,
not the city financing.
we're never going to have entry-level housing in the $200,000 range if a developer gets into it.
You're not going to have it here either.
Well, I think we could come really close.
But then you're building a 1,100 square foot home.
Well,
You're
whatever.
not going to build anything
Whatever,
larger
11,
than that.
1,200?
I don't really see the harm in at least pursuing this or, further investigating. I've only been on the council a short time, but I know that the lack of available housing is a huge problem. And if this could, move us forward towards solving that problem, I'm in favor of at least looking further into it.
The apartment is going to serve some purpose.
Right.
It's going to have something. Half of those units are going to be bought up for people moving off the lake. The other half are going to be people working at the clinic or working in town, and that's great. to me, it's not the ideal situation for a young family with 2 or 3 kids to come up here and move in the 3rd story of an apartment building. And this is giving them an opportunity to have a garage and a backyard and a deck with a barbecue on it.
So is the county appraising the property?
No, there's no pursuit. It was just I just talked to Tim about it. He said that is the perfect thing that the county would do. So I didn't pursue it any farther.
I don't understand if it was tax forfeited, why it wasn't brought to the city before.
Well, there's a
Or
lot of
maybe it
tax
was.
forfeit land that just sits there.
Well, I know, but when land is tax forfeited, they're usually coming. Oh,
We
okay,
currently
I'm
have a use agreement with the county to use that for trail purposes, recreational purposes. This is, the property you see with circled or squared in red.
Right here?
Yep, that's city property. And then venturing north, that's our Nordic Ridge Trail for
So
skiing.
you can
and
see actually the trails in there a little bit.
Yep.
And they
So
go all
my
the way
concern
up
would be, how would this affect our trail system?
Also, if it, not only that, that's county property you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's tax
Are we
forfeited.
going to annex that into the city?
Well, we could. And actually, here is the 50 Lakes line right here, that red line. So 50 Lakes is up north, Cross Lake is down here. So if we ever had a dream of having a road that went up to Highway 1, another way out of town, we would definitely have to work with 50 Lakes. That's not directly part of this proposal. That's something that the city could, 20 years from now or whatever, work on.
I guess I'm not in favor of using city funds for that.
Okay.
That's my stance.
Any other?
I don't have a problem with checking into it and seeing what.
I don't have any other- yeah, I agree.
County would, I assume they're going to appraise it. They're not going to just give it to the
There's a
city.
confusion there. The green boxes are the county land. The land that he's talking about is privately owned. It's a way to get to the green land. So this would be private land, and so in my mind, the question would be, the 675 number was what the landowner thinks it's worth. Do you want to spend some money to get your own appraisal or verify, or how do you want to go about countering that? But that's just the landowner's price. I'm not sure how he got to that number.
Okay, so.
Not county owned.
So we would get the private land. Are we going to get
Dave's
to
vision, which
the
I've just
tax
heard for the first
forfeited?
time, would be, you would do a 40, 50 lot plot in that 50 acres with a road system that would dead end and not stop in lots, but get you so that you could go to the next 40. So it does 2 things. It provides affordable housing on the 50 acres.
Yeah.
But it gets you a road to the next, the 40 that's green. Then somebody, whether it's a city or private development, would have to buy the county land to do the next 40. But there's no county involvement on the first 50.
Oh.
What it would do, it'd give the city some options. You know, how much property does the city own? And maybe we're not in the market for owning a bunch of property. But every development, every road, dead-end cul-de-sac that I see pushed in here is primarily for big pole barns, storage buildings. There's none of this small, single-family housing going on. And if there's any way that we could control that, I would be totally in favor of it. Because a developer is going to want to show as much profit as they can. So these $30,000 lots would sell for $60,000 to $80,000 today. And they're doing it right over on Johnny Street right now. They just punched a road in, and that's what they are. So that's going to, and then if you get a private contractor to build it, there's going to be a huge margin on that. And then it's going to be a $400,000 house. And you can build a house for $200,000, Aaron.
Well,
yes, you can. It's a modest house, but that's all these little young families are crying for. Anybody who's got kids or something, they can't afford to live here. You know, there's no option for them here. They got to go somewhere else.
So do you get access off the Wilderness Trail?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be where the road would come off of.
Mhm.
So Dave, are you you're not looking for a motion to actually buy the land, you're just looking for a motion to continue investigating this?
Yeah, I think the next step would be to negotiate a little bit.
In my
better.
mind, the next step would be, do you want some sort of independent analysis on that value? Because I assume the council doesn't want to just wing it and trust the landowner's pricing. So in my mind, do you want to authorize the grant or whatever it costs for an appraisal is that money well spent or not, question mark? Because I don't think you're going to get any farther without your own valuation process.
But there's one thing that I just want to assure you, is that from Wilderness Trailer Park, at the end of Wilderness Trail, which the Pine River, or is that the Daggett? What river is that that comes? Daggett? Daggett comes in, all the way over to the Ox Lake Hills or Ox Lake Landing. There is not another piece of property that we could go north on. There's nothing. And it's all private property. So this is an opportunity to get up into that tax forfeit property that I think the county would totally support the city use for. You know, they'd love to see the property tax. They'd love to see the use of it.
You wouldn't need any county approval for the first 50. It's
No,
purely
no,
city.
no, it's
yeah.
that, but this is
Right.
buying.
In my mind, the
future.
question is, as a council, do you want to spend the money to get it valued, to know, and then the next step would be, once you get that valuation, to make an offer? Or you don't have to get, in my mind, at that price point, you need an appraisal, in my opinion. Or some sort of independent.
Or to get an opinion from Phil and have him look at the property going north. You know, what is the potential here for that property? But I mean, I've done a little bit of that. I've gone to the surveyors, and I did talk to Anderson Brothers generically, just to get kind of a flavor for it.
But Dave, we forced developers to build the road to our specifications and then turn it over to us. So now you're telling me that the city's going to go in there and build that road, pay for it completely, and we aren't-
sell
we
lots
aren't fixing
cheaper
any streets
than
in the
anybody else
city.
will. That is exactly what I'm telling you.
And we're not fixing any streets in the city today. I think there's a cart before the horse here.
But the sale of the lots would supposedly.
Oh, it'd pay us back.
Pay it back.
Yeah.
Could we also consider the impacts of our trail system along with that process and just see where it
Well,
would fit in?
first
with-
of all, TJ, the impacts of that aren't going to take place until the next phase comes, which may be 20 years out.
Okay.
I think there are opportunities to skirt along the edge of it and get up to some of those back where you're not at. You know, and the other cold reality of it is as the city grows, everybody's got to suffer a little bit. And maybe your trails will get moved over to some of that county land over up by McLean Lake or something, you know. I mean, I don't know, but that's not for this year or probably 5 or 10 years from now. That's for the future. I just know that we've got a one-time opportunity here, because I think this guy's going to sell it. He's going to at least put it on the market and try to sell it this spring. And once it's gone, we don't have another connection.
This is a can of worms to the city. This is another Highway 66 project coming up on us.
I don't know that I've ever looked through your glasses, Aaron. I'm not sure, but I'm too. I think I'd get dizzy.
I know that we've been seeking some kind of a solution to the housing situation, and I don't really see a problem with at least further investigating this, so I would like to move that we allocate funds to at least get some kind of an appraisal.
I'll second that.
Okay, now a little more discussion. Grand Rapids. Well, I mean, we got a motion to second. This is the time for it. The city of Grand Rapids, up in Itasca County, right here, they took an old school down and they're building affordable houses because they want kids to come into town. So now whether we do it through the EDA or we do it through HRA or however we do it, I don't know those answers. We got to figure that out. But Grand Rapids is currently doing it right now, and here's a big article on it. So it can be done if you got the will to do it. Any other comments on it? So the motion is to direct our attorney to.
What I heard is, and I put a guesstimated cost, I'm not sure how accurate it is, but $1,000-ish or so. Does the council feel that that's worth spending to get an appraisal? If it's way off and it costs $5,000 or something, I would come back and ask for an adjustment on that before we go forward.
Sounds good to me.
Perfect.
I think it is. Jerry, I'm going to ask you a question now because we are at the second motion. Is there 29 acres for sale off lake right behind your house?
That was we tried to buy that was in a trust and he wanted $500,000 for it when 10 years ago, so I don't know if it's for sale now or not.
Oh, okay. I thought I had heard it was 500 for 29 acres. And it's for sale, it's not sold. I mean, that's a big, you know, anything can
Don't
put
we
it.
have a 2-acre minimum lot size?
Well, not within 1,000 feet of the lake, which part of this falls into, but we might have to make some adjustments, but the city can do that.
Yeah, I know we can, but if you start doing it for one, you better be ready to do it for everyone.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Yes.
That land by us there, that 29 acres, he was plotting that out too, but he quit because, some of it was wetlands.
Yeah.
He couldn't put all his lots he wanted to in there. And he, well, this is before we were up there, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean, see what the comps are and see what it is.
Right.
You, obviously, once you get the appraisal, that'll decide whether this is crazy or not to some extent. But that's step one in my mind.
Decide whether we are or he is or something in
Well,
between.
that's what an appraisal's for. Yeah.
It can't hurt, just to,
Well, other than $1,000, it can't hurt.
Yeah. Well, I just think, you know, our kids in this town are diminishing greatly, and we got to have young families to have a healthy community. I see it every day. So, okay, next. We got a commission appointment for the Economic Development, EDA. John Andrews wants to be on the appointment, so I need a motion to accept John Andrews as a...
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll tell you.
And that's for an alternate, right? Because there's 7 members on there already.
Is that alternate, Patty? Yeah, okay. Resolution accepting donations. We have received donations from the Pell Foundation for $1,926.14, intended purpose, the playground. And another donation from Roger and Carol Roy for $1,000 for the fire department. We need a motion to accept that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we got a letter from the Emily Food Shelf looking for money. God, it seemed like we just had this conversation. Do we give them money?
We gave them $250 last year.
Each year, that's what we do?
That's what we have done, yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a
Why
motion.
do we do that for Emily and not Cross Lake? I don't understand why we do that.
We ask that every year.
I know I do, but I just don't understand. We should be given to Cross Lake Food Shelf and not Emily.
They come to us and ask us, they
And
just,
we
Well, I'm
ask
just
that every year.
saying, does-
Nobody comes and asks for it,
Does Emily go to the city council and Emily?
probably.
Emily's Food Shelf?
Yeah. But we have
Do they
people
go to
in town
Pequot?
that would use them as well, so I don't know.
and is that a good use of taxpayer funds, to give it to a food shelf? I mean, is that fair for us to do up here with
That
that money?
would be an
It's
attorney
allowed.
question.
It's allowed.
It's allowed, but that doesn't, is that a good public use of your money? That's clearly a council decision. If you think it's a good idea, then please do it. If not, don't spend $250. I mean, that's, just because it's allowed doesn't mean you should. That's two different.
$250 to both.
No, the other one's not asking for it.
I mean, if they're in our city, but I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure that we should do it, but. Somebody want to make a motion on it?
I'd rather see it go to Cross Lake, but
I think we should just let it, don't take any action on it.
No action? Let it go?
Oh.
We really should have a yes or a no, shouldn't we? Yeah. Okay, I make a motion, we don't give Emily Food Shelf the $250.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. What are we doing with the Public Safety Committee? Chip, do you know anything, or Eric, do you know what this is?
Yeah,
I put this in written form, you're changing it from mayor and council member to 2 council members,
Okay.
the makeup.
But then you also have to change the 9 to 10, because we had only authorized 9, and there's actually 10 with 2 council members
Okay.
on the commission.
There was 2 before. Was that wrong all the time?
But there shouldn't have been. That's the thing. Dave was there, came in after the fact, but this, all you're doing is change the 9 to 10. That's all you're doing.
Okay, well, I make a motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Then we got Israel Christmas buyback. Are we selling more or buying back more cemetery lots?
Buying back.
Seems like we're buying back more.
Is $500 here the correct number? On the back of the front page. E1 I'm on. Oh, I'm sorry, number 8. Okay. Next one on my packet was.
Oh, this one goes off to city administrator. Okay, discuss fire chief wages. Do you want to do that, Sandy?
I think it'd probably be somebody that's worked with it versus Sandy.
Oh, well, who's doing it?
What I had proposed that we'd talk about it and that we propose an increase to him. In looking at the number of hours and stuff that he's been putting in over the last 3 years, it has been running somewhere north or south of 2,080, which is a full-time job.
80 hours?
2,080 hours, which is equates out to a full-time job. We've been paying him for, what, half-time? And getting literally full-time out of it.
We've been doing a couple things. We've been paying an hourly wage plus a monthly stipend for being the fire chief. And one of the ideas we've talked about several times was, what does it look like now compared to what should it look like, and where do we want to be in the future? One thing you could do is you could, your 2,000 hours, I just looked at last year, and if you take the stipend off and you divide it by the hourly wage, you get about 2,035 hours, around that, less whatever CHIP doesn't charge us for. An easy way to do this, we probably should have been paying benefits for him as a full-time employee. Right now, the only benefits CHIP receives is the employer's share of FICA and Medicare. For a full-time employee, that could be considered eligible for all city benefits as an employee. If you changed the model to removing the stipend and changing the hourly rate to about $30 an hour, and offer benefits, the change would be about $6,000 in salary and he'd be eligible for a benefit package, which is about $40,000. When you figure if an employee took a family policy for insurance, we paid para on the police, fire rates, and all that. What we did during budget process is we looked at what would it take if that employee at a similar hourly rate was a full-time employee taking a full benefit package, which not everyone does. And so we put an incremental allowance in the 2023 budget of about $43,000. The change to go to $30 an hour at the hours that this individual worked last year, that incremental change would be about $40,000, between $40,000 and $45,000, depending on what they're taking. And that's really a council decision. And the whole idea would be to use that skill set in the budget, whatever you wanted to call that part-time person, or moving to a more permanent type fire chief versus what we have now, would give you an opportunity to do that with a skilled person. So that's what we've been tasked to do, and that's what the numbers would look like.
What's the stipend been?
$14,400 a year.
That's for fire chief. The hourly rate is for going on calls and?
For going on calls and doing some of the duties that aren't covered by the stipend. Training.
the reports and stuff should all be covered by the stipend, I would assume.
That's
For
an
fire
incorrect
chief.
assumption.
Well,
Chip
it should
can
be.
explain more than that.
What?
Chip can explain more about what he does for that.
Yeah, I just think that to put him on as full-time when we have a committee that's working on it right now is kind of premature. We have a committee, we have a meeting February 27th, and
Could you reschedule it for sooner?
February 20, yeah, it's funny if we put a committee together and we're trying to do this before, that's a little odd.
exactly. I mean, what was the point of looking at the structure of the fire department and deciding if we needed a full-time fire chief, and then the city council just oversteps
Chip,
and
I got a question for you. If we do the VRBOs and there is inspections, there's going to be a charge for that. Would that be in addition to this, or would that be by the hour? And the city would get the charges?
That's how you decide to structure, that's part of the fire chief's group. What duties would that person have in addition to the fire? Would it be the short-term rental inspections along with Pete's group? That's all how you organize it. But I think right now, we're just talking about my pay right now. Until that happens,
the $1,200.
we're getting $20 an hour for a department head, as I was told I was.
Well,
I am
head
a
of the fire
I'm a chief,
department, or department
but
head,
$20
or
an
a
hour
fire
for the
chief.
amount of hours I put in, it's, I might just step back a little bit because it's a lot of time I put into this, and $20 an hour doesn't really do much. I'm just saying.
But you want to increase in the
To
$1,200
answer
a
your-
month, right?
No, I'd
Is
rather
that-
go by the hour. Stipend, as you said, as you said, would cover calls. My stipend's been the same, and our calls have doubled and tripled, so the stipend doesn't do anything.
The stipend is that $1,200 a month.
Right, and
That's
that's
what
been
I-
like
that's
that
what I
for
said.
many years.
Yes, and that's what we're looking to increase, not deciding
I'd
on
rather
a
get paid
full-time.
by the hour, and then I can document everything I do, even though I do right now. There's other departments that get paid more stipend than I do, and they only have 70 calls a year.
I guess we have to decide what we want to do if we're going to move forward to hiring a,
The full-time's a separate discussion.
I know it is
Full-time's
now,
trying
but-
to say. I've had conversations with many of you on this hourly thing, and you guys, it just seems not to go anywhere, but.
I don't recall the
Trying to
health
change
insurance, the insurance being part of our last
No, we
discussion
didn't have
about
that
this.
discussion, but if.
But we're just going to throw that in?
No, I'm just saying, we just found out that the amount of hours that I put in, I'm eligible for, if you want to talk to the League of Cities, you can go in there and see that I am eligible and should have been getting paid health insurance and benefits for the amount of hours that I put in over the last 3 years. And I'm just making that comment.
But that's another 40,000 bucks a year, or no, 30, 20, 25 or
Whatever
so.
it is.
well, you're going to be paying pension too.
Well, whatever it is though, but that's what I'd like to know, what it is, and then we can agree to it. That's
I'm
all.
just looking to get an increase in for the amount of time that I put in.
Well,
here.
I've provided that top end to you. For the employer's share of benefit, it'd be roughly $40,000 to treat Chip like a full-time employee. And that's an argument we would lose if pressed, in my opinion.
So how does that work if, for PERA? Would you be eligible for PERA since we're already contributing to your pension as a fireman? That's a separate deal. Then we're giving them a double pension. And I'm just saying, is that how that would work?
No, I would get out of the Relief Association, then I would go into para probably.
You'd go into para.
You'd be forced to.
You'd be
Be
forced
forced to, if I was full-time, correct.
With the number of hours you're putting in, we would be forced to move you.
Correct.
Here comes union too. Here comes union too.
Well, that's up to him.
Well,
But you did
I-
ask what the costs were, and I provided that to you. That was the direction.
Yeah?
All I'm saying is, why are we trying to make I don't have a problem with increasing the stipend or whatever, but why is the city council considering a full-time position tonight when you got this other committee that's
what
supposed to
I-
be doing
I
it?
would go along with the $30 an hour, and that's as much as I'd go along with right now. Yeah.
But when you do that, then Dave, you're having to pay him $30 an hour for the hours he puts in. Do you understand the difference here?
Isn't that fair? Isn't that fair that he?
That he wants.
But Dave's not getting that, understanding that, because once you do that, then you're also forced to pay him the benefits,
Well,
because he's putting in over 2,000 hours a year. So when you do that, be careful how you look at it, is what I'm saying, because when you say the $30 an hour for what he's putting in, would you say 2,035 last year?
That's what the math works out to, and
Okay.
actually to be eligible
Well,
for benefits.
2,080
you
is,
have to-
is full-time. That's 40 hours a week times 52 weeks.
But at 2035, then he's under full-time. He's not meeting full-time.
No, he
he's
would be
meeting the
full-time.
eligibility for requirements at 1,040.
It would be full-time, because you're only, what, 45 hours for the whole year. That's less than an hour a week that you're off.
Pretty soon you're gonna get what you pay for. It's not gonna be much.
Well,
Well, the good news is you've provided a placeholder in the budget to accommodate that. And so what I've provided you is a path forward till you get to that transition, like Chip mentioned, sooner. And for that wage would be far less than what it would cost you for a full-time fire chief. Right. On today's market. And you can look out, I think there's several examples Chip's already provided you for communities similar to our size, smaller and larger, that are paying quite a bit more than what we're offering for that.
I understand, Marcia, how you feel, but you've got this committee going and you're trying to, solve some problems, but I also think it seems like Chip has been working for quite a while, underpaid and working. So, I mean, I feel like it keeps getting kicked down the road and.
well, how about if we did a $30 an hour interim until the committee gets done and comes back with a recommendation on what we should do? Perfect. I mean, isn't that what we're kind of?
Mike?
That's really up to what you want to do, but the position you're putting yourself in is you have a full-time employee that you're not paying benefits for, is essentially what you have.
Are we required to pay benefits on full-time? Is there a law that says that? I'm asking the attorney.
Yes, I think what Mike hinted at is, labeling is not enough. So if in practice, so you've got 3 years of data saying he's working full-time, you owe him benefits, whatever the hell you label him is the problem. I think where the disconnect could be, not the disconnect, where the reason for the committee still exists is, if you don't like that answer or want to reconstructure things, the committee could say, let's take away short-term rental from his job duties. Let's maybe even take away some of the secretarial duties that he's talked about in the past and pay somebody else at a lower wage. You could still do all those things in that committee and not be inconsistent with asking for $30 an hour. So those things can go together. But if you're acknowledging that he's been doing that kind of pay or that kind of hours, it seems to me it is what it is. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that he's been full-time for 3 years, it sounds like. So you might as well go ahead and get there. That makes it, that doesn't mean in the future, you can change his committees or his job duties and he won't be full-time. So you still have the power to do that. It doesn't take that power away. It's just, if you don't change his job duties, he's telling you, this town has grown.
Brad, the way it's going
full-time.
though is that if it's going to be a full-time benefited employee, then all of a sudden it's going to be a union thing, and we got nothing to say about anything. So.
Well, no, your solution would be, if that's a problem in the eyes of the council, change his job duties, don't give him short-term rentals, maybe add a secretary, and so his hours are much less, and he won't be full-time. You're not saying, the motion is not declaring he's full-time no matter what. The motion is change it, get rid of the stipend idea and pay him $30 an hour.
I mean,
What
that's
his
what
job duties are will change based on what the committee does.
Do we need to change his hours before we change his pay?
Well, no, you're getting rid of the stipend. I think what you're doing, I think what the motion would be is, let's get rid of the stipend because it has not changed in many years. Go to a different type of pay, $30 an hour. Whether that leads to full-time, right now it's full-time, but you could change in that committee and eventually get passed by the council. His job duties might change where it's not full-time because you're gonna add a position or create hire a it's getting too late. VRBO position and not put that on the fire chief.
Well, I don't have an issue paying them $30 an hour. I don't know how it ever turned into a full-time position. It's always been a volunteer fire department, but that's kind of going by the side. And I don't know how that was directed or how that happened. It just is.
It's not a volunteer fire department anymore. We pay them $25 an hour to go to calls.
Well, we've always paid them something.
We no longer have a volunteer department.
Yeah. Yeah. I always thought it was, but it's not.
I think all of us did up until recently. Yeah, and then finally we started listening.
Okay, so what do you want to do?
I move that we increase Chip's pay to $30 an hour.
Second.
Pending the outcome of the committee hearings? I mean, not pending it, but.
Does that include removing the stipend?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, so, and that could change again once the committee meets and comes back with another recommendation.
So,
Correct. Is that correct? Okay. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, all in favor.
Change his job duties, he won't qualify.
As long as you start writing benefits right now, or what?
No. I got one other thing on here. What is happening with raising this platform? What are we doing back here?
Nothing.
Nothing? And why not? Did we not decide that we were going to do that? Okay, then I want to make a motion that we raise this platform and get some new chairs up here.
Hey, you raise that platform, you're gonna get new chairs too.
Well, I know, that's what I said, and get new chairs.
Why don't you do the deal I said? Like a bar has a foot deal in front for you to put your feet on.
yeah.
Build something up in front, 16 inches out and 8 or 10 inches high and try that.
Because these chairs are the most uncomfortable chairs I've ever sat in.
Well, you can,
And I spent a lot of time sitting in them.
yeah, but right now you put your feet back on that chair.
Right.
If you put them straight down,
We had something to put our
at
feet
least
on.
make a couple blocks and try it.
Got any egg cartons or something I could stack up down here?
You raise that whole thing up, you're gonna spend another $5,000 on chairs too. We gotta quit spending foolishly. I mean, when you got a little thing, you try like that, would cost maybe, you hire a contractor up here, probably $500.
Dave, you could probably build it.
No, they won't let me build it.
Why not?
I don't know.
It would take 2 hours.
Can I hire you to build me a box?
And then will you bring it up here and place it in the right spot? All right, let's forget that. Strike it. I might just bring my own box up here. All right, Mike, it's all yours.
Okay, so we've got a real easy one here. We've got an individual who would like us to buy back a cemetery lot because they no longer need it. So we need a council motion approval to do that.
Did they pay $500 for the lot? Did they pay $500 for the lot? Because I see 500 written here.
That's correct.
Okay.
We have the ability to buy it back from the individual for what they paid for it.
Okay.
Provided the council approves
That was
it.
my question.
And they paid $500 for it. I thought they were $250. No?
No, this one, go ahead, Char.
Residents pay $250, non-residents pay $500.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay, I make a motion, we approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
All right, item 2 is, right now, we're going through the renewal process for our property and casualty insurance. It gets kind of confusing when you look at the language when you're reading insurance contracts, because it's very specific. Some of the things we've done this year is we had, they actually paid TJ and I a visit because we've had so much construction, whether it's playground or buildings. And they went through all our buildings and looked at them, measured them, and said, do we have the right values on these buildings? Yes or no? So we're still hammering through that process so we can agree on that. But one of the things we need to do is set our liability limits. And the way the wording reads is if you want to do something else than what's statutorily required, then you can do that. But the way the wording is we do not waive the monetary limits applied to tort liability established by Minnesota statutes 466.04, which means we accept the statutory limits.
I'll make a motion that we do not waive the monetary limits on municipal tort liability.
I second that motion.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I'm done.
All right. Patty or Dean, or when are you going to come up?
Where are we? Oh.
You're both going to come up.
My name's Dean Fitch, and Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you for hearing our report from EDA tonight. First off, we have a lot going on, but I just want to hit on three key things for you. The evening is late enough. One is that Patty Neurgaard's going to talk about our new website. I'm going to address some comprehensive plan things, and then Tyler Glenn, the leader of Bladek, is going to address the update on some of the housing things we've been working on, the economic outlook for 2023, and in collaboration with us. First off, on the comprehensive plan, we've had a couple of real benefits this year. One of them has been that Bladek has agreed to write some of this, which we had originally budgeted to have an outside firm write, so that's going to save us some money, very good thing. And the telephone company has agreed to do a lot of the work on the website that we were going to have an outside organization to do. So although I know you can't cut your way out of a downturn, it is important to note that saving dollars here and there is really helpful, even though our budget is 1/3 of 1% of the general budget. Okay, back to the comprehensive plan. First off, we are going through that step by step, and we are hoping by the end of this year we will have completed it. The whole purpose of that effort was just to update the plan, but to give it more specificity. There were a lot of areas within the plan that I would say is like a 10,000-foot level view of it, and we need to bring it down to 500 feet so that we're really having specific goals and challenges and identify them, and then put some really strong information together so we know how to act on them once they are brought up or called for. So that's coming along. There's 9 of them altogether. We're a third of the way through and ready to tackle the second third, and it's just digging along. It's just a lot of hours that we spend, but it's necessary to get this done right. The other thing that's going on around that, I'd just like to mention that Tyler might touch on or not, but we have talked with the mayor about the possibility of holding a housing symposium this spring for builders to try to get a better idea of what they think they need to build in this community, and to get some support for them so that they may be more energetic about following up on some of these leads. As you all know, the apartment complex thing that's been in the works has taken an awful lot of time because it's taken a lot of different people to get engaged at different levels. And that's a known thing, and I understand all that. But in that particular case, it's similar to what Mayor Dave's talking about. We had to have a party who owned the land who was willing to sell it at a reasonably good price. We had to have a builder who was willing to build because he knew the area and had worked here and done well to do the work. So I think you got to get the right combination of people to make that thing happen as it should. So without spending any more time, because even with all my padding, I'm tired of sitting, sir, so we keep going. But Patty's going to come up next and talk about the website, and then Tyler is going to finish up our report tonight.
Thank you, Dean.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
So TJ, do you want to put the site up?
Oh, wow.
I know, it's very pretty, isn't it? So anyway, this is the homepage of our new Cross Lake EDA website. And we just have to mention Tremolo Communications. They were very, very generous with time and expertise in designing the website, inputting all the website, and it was specifically designed so that when we think of prospective businesses joining, we have the answers for them on this website. And the other thing we did was we looked at other websites in other cities, a lot of them, and we kept our wording down to a few, so people don't have to go through paragraphs after paragraphs to learn about their community. And TJ, I'll just let you focus on or click on the live tab and go down there just a little bit. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each one, but I want you to just look to see what we have under each of the tabs. And you can see that for someone who wants to live in Cross Lake, what do we have to offer here? We have a large senior population. It was 58% a couple years ago. It may have expanded, and so we have to keep those in mind. You can click on the work tab, and it will, show you how easy it is to work out of your home here. So if you have a small business that you can bring up here from another space and want the environment that we so enjoy, there's information on there. We have resources such as Bladek, the Small Business Development Corporation out of CLC, and SCORE for those who need more information on how to run a business, how to start a business, how to keep their business running. You can move on to About Us, TJ. Or yeah, how can we forget the play? Okay, we have our fabulous community center. We have upcoming events on there, so if you plugged in that, it would direct you to the chamber. We have the Cross Lake Art Club, we have the Cross Lake Garden Club, and we can certainly add more like the Cross Lake Area Senior Services, which we're hosting our 4th annual Senior Expo on April 29th. And then you can click on the next tab. So that is a little bit about our mission statement, and if you want to scroll down on that, can you scroll down on that? And here, as Dean pointed out, are our top 3 projects, as we talked about, as you guys talked about earlier. Housing has always been on the hot conversation for the past 5 years at least. Dean talked about the comprehensive plan and more about our EDA website. And so I'll let you scroll down or move to the next tab. Here we have our members. We still are missing a few bios, and it's hard to read on the white over orange. So you'll have to go on to crosslakeeda.com and find out who we are and who we were and what we did in our past lives. Okay, and then do we have the last one? And so this is just a very simple contact sheet. And so when somebody looks at our website and they have questions, they will put their name, their email address, and this is going to go specifically right to Bladek, because we figure anybody who has a question out of the EDA, they're going to need a larger resource than what we have on our commission. So there you have the new Cross Lake EDA website, and we think it's gorgeous. Thanks, TJ.
Beautiful. All right. Good job, Patty.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Tyler Glenn. I'm the Executive Director of the Brainerd Lakes Area Economic Development Corporation, Bladek. That's when we changed, we went through our rebranding last year. We're going with the acronym, so I hope everybody remembers that. I'm here to talk about short-term rentals. No. I'm kidding, Mayor.
Perfect.
I'm
not. Entry-level housing.
This is 2 weeks in a row for me that I've been at, yeah. 2 weeks in a row that I've been at city council meetings where this has been a very hot topic, but I won't get into the economic impact of what those are, because that's a much bigger conversation. But I just want to briefly, honestly, just quickly talk about a couple of things. I really want to thank the Dean and Patty and the support that we receive from all of you. It's really hard for us to do our jobs in all of these communities without this support. I have a very small staff. Fortunately, my board Friday approved us to hire another individual, so it's going to be great for us. We're going to manage our social media, do some administrative things for us, but we know where the shape of communication and our foundation is going, and we know that we need to step up in certain areas, and certainly social media is an area that we can be better at and we will be better at. So honestly, we need to hire somebody that's about 23 years old, because they get that, and maybe we don't. Jackson, I'm just pointing at you just because.
I know,
Yeah.
I get it.
A couple of quick things. We are continuing to work on the housing, and the housing brings probably more fire calls, but that's what happens with that. We look at our housing study told us at the end of 2020 that we were 4,800 units short in Crow Wing County, 4,800. And that's for the next 10 years. We're looking at that. We can impact that in certain ways. There's other ways we're never going to impact that. This apartment complex is going to help that. That's where some of our need that we're seeing is coming from. And we're seeing that all over Crow Wing County. We're seeing developments that are occurring in Baxter. We're seeing a new apartment complex. There's land being bought in Pequot Lakes. There is action when it comes to this. There's activity that's coming with this, and we need it. It's a glaring problem, but we have other issues. We have childcare that's a significant issue for us in Crow Wing County. Right now, our statistics show us we're 1,200 slots short for available childcare in Crow Wing County. That's a dangerous number, but it's 88,000 at the state level. So it's something that's coming from the state down. It's trickling out. We see it. We're addressing it. We're working really hard on this. We administered $800,000 with Crow Wing County in 2022 to try and address this problem. That $800,000 is going to probably get us about 250 new slots. It's an expensive process, but we're working on it. We will continue to work on it. We get the data, and with that data, we can hopefully impact this. We're going to see some money coming down from the state. We have an $18 billion, and I'm rounding up, but we have a $17.6 billion surplus at the state level. Some of that money is going to go out to what I'm hearing anyway from my colleagues at the state is into housing, into childcare, and some other infrastructure needs I think that some of our communities have. You all know this, but we'll see what it trickles out to greater Minnesota. It's typically 65% of state funding stays in the 7-county metro. When we think about that and say, okay, now 35% is going to get out to greater Minnesota, that's 80 counties. What we get our hands on, and we'll try to get our hands on, hopefully some of this money is going to help us in greater Minnesota, but specifically it's going to help us in Crow Wing County. We're the 18th largest county in the state, and we are trying to get funding. We're trying to get additional money to help some of these projects come to fruition. So that's some of the things that we're working on. But again, the help that I receive over here from all of you, I know Aaron attends all of our meetings. Sandy has started to show up at our meetings, and it's great to have her on board. I know these are learning curves that come with some of this stuff. I'm a long time into this, and my parents still ask me what I do. But Dean and Patty have been tremendous assets to this, along with the rest of the board that we have. We're continuing to do the work that we do to help this community grow and prosper, but we're going to grow at the rate that you guys want it to grow, and we're going to keep pushing programs up here that you address and you ask us to do. So we'll continue to do that work. I have a really good relationship with Mike, and we work together when we have to work together on projects, and that's huge for me. In all of the communities that we work in, having that strong city administrator means the world, because we know that's the first line of defense when it comes to these types of things. So if any of you have questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. You can reach me whenever you need to. It's whatever time at this point. I will say one more thing. When you guys do get a chance to talk to, or at least if you see the folks at Tremolo, building a website like they just built at a minimum would have cost this group at least $5,000. I would tell you that it would have probably cost you $10,000 to get a website like that built. They built that for free, They had a lot of volunteer help. I know Allison Medic and our staff did a lot of work with Patty and this group to get this done. It's beautiful. It looks great. I think you're going to drive a lot of traffic to it. And that's what's important in today's day and age, is driving that traffic there. So outside of that, if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But again, thank you for the support that you provide to us, and we'll continue to hopefully help do the work that needs to be done here.
Thank you for your efforts on our behalf.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll have it, thanks. We'll talk short-term rentals another time, Dave.
I'd like to make a motion that the city acknowledges Tremolo for their website and have a letter sent to them thanking them for their.
Second.
All right, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Marcia, you can write the letter.
Did you get that?
All right. Peter, you're up, huh?
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Before you is item F number 2, and that is the final plat for Highway 103 subdivision involving a total of 6 tracks. The preliminary plat was heard by the Planning Commission on December 16th and unanimously recommended for approval to the City Council, and what we're looking for is an action request and for approval for the final plat of Highway 103 storage.
I make a motion to approve the plat.
I second.
Are they just adding on to what they have?
Yeah, 6 more units, and it's a built-out parcel now, so this is the last of
end
the.
of it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
All right.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And the next one, F2B, is the memo dated from TJ Grauman to the City Council for the park dedication consideration. The Cross Lake Parks and Rec and Library Commission recommends that the $9,000 in lieu of land be collected for the 103 storage subdivision. So it'd also be looking for an action on this as well, too, please.
I'll make a motion.
Request the $9,000 fee.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. And that concludes the P&Z item agendas. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Sorry we went so late. Phil, or is it you? Patrick, pay applications?
I'll do the wastewater treatment plant, I guess. I don't have the information. Pay application for Rice Lake. This is for the clarifier work that's happening at the wastewater treatment plant. I believe they were putting that into operation here pretty quick.
The last clarifier is in operation, and next week they're taking the first one out, do a couple modifications.
Right.
So, and everything will be back online then. So, life is good down there.
So we're recommending payment to the contractor in the amount stated.
$108,504.45.
Correct.
I move we approve the payment.
I second.
This meets our always stated goal of getting the plant operational, but by the time St. Patty's Day hits, so we're in good shape for that.
Perfect.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Then I have 3 items that they relate to the CSA 66 sanitary sewer extension. This is on the heels of action taken by the City Council at your December 12th meeting to consent to sending a letter to the contractor agreeing to pay for a number of change order items, and then also agreeing to meet a substantial completion number that required no liquidated damage for substantial completion, but also then keeping final completion liquidated damages in play. So the first change order is number 2 on the project. It's in the amount of $7,224.19. It was for the purpose of upsizing some commercial sanitary sewer service pipes from 4-inch to 6-inch, replacing catch basin at the fire hall, adding traffic control signs when we went to phase 2, and traffic wanted to try and leave on Ox Lake Road, and then also cleaning up soil that washed down in a big storm event after the road was essentially ready to be opened, and that was at the 66 Marine property, where they did private property improvements, and it rained, and it ended up on the road, and we had the contractor move it so we could finish the project.
Are you going to charge them back, or what are you doing with
That would be a city decision.
Shouldn't the contractor have had something in place so that the?
It was not his responsibility because they did if you recall, the contractor only did the curb along there. And then during the project, 66 Marine took out all the trees and shrubs and actually re-landscaped their entire area. And then they put the topsoil down, and they did not do any measures to protect the soil from coming down.
So it's Marine 66 problem?
Yes, it should be.
Yes.
But we took care of it so we could finish the project and not get any type of a violation.
So do they know that, what it costs? And
I don't know if the city's approached them on that.
You haven't
What
contacted
is
them?
that line
Well,
item? I don't see it here.
$2,000, I believe is which one it is. I'll look. $1,200.
So if they're the reason that all came down and we had to move it, they should be billed for that.
I agree. Yeah, it's basically labor and equipment time that equals $1,200.
So that 1,200 would come out of the 7,200, correct?
Out of the
If we didn't agree with
2,000, out of the 7,224? Yeah.
First you have to bill it.
If we said no, correct?
Yeah, we've recommended that, we believe that should have been their cost, but we were at 11th hour to get the thing done, so we just had our contract.
Well, I agree with that you did it. I agree with that. But to bill it back, so we would still owe the 7,200.
Right, we have a contract with the contractor.
And
had
then we
them
would
do the
need to
work.
bill back 66 Marine.
We should be in contact with them. Yeah.
I think we need a motion for that.
Whose responsibility, would that be you, Mike? Who would?
Well, we have to approve it.
Right.
And then
For the $1,200 you bill.
Right.
he would.
Is that a motion, Aaron, to bill 66 Marine? Is that a motion?
Well, I just want to clear my mind before I do anything, but yeah, I think I would put it that way, Marcia, okay? And I think he's going to go through all three before we make motions, right?
Well, we gotta
I think
do
you have
each one.
individual resolutions.
So I'll make a motion, we approve change order number, what is it?
Two.
Two.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, now do we want the city to
Motion
build them
to-
back? That's a separate motion.
Yeah. You want to make that?
Yes. I'll make that motion.
I second.
Okay, can you just, what is that motion? For the city to build back?
That the city will bill 66 Marine for that $1,200 expense that we incurred.
Okay, and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Change order number 3 addresses stormwater-related items at the Simonson Pond. When we dug that out, we were unaware that that was actually a debris pile for a dump. I didn't want to say that, but you did. So a dump for concrete, rebar, and other items. So we paid the contractor to remove that, and then we rip-wrapped the sides because of the materials that were in there weren't like just normal compacted soil. So that added a cost of $15,954.84. We put this in this change order because we put it in the category of the stormwater grant because it's related to stormwater, so we're getting reimbursed. We're trying to get it, we got it in the grant reimbursement, I guess. So you might be asking why we didn't do one. We tried to strategically grab these, stick them in spots.
Make a motion to approve. Make a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, so then the last one, it directly relates to the county's decision to, when we're about halfway done with the project, to replace the other half of the concrete curb on the road. So when this project was put together, our sanitary sewer was impacting only one side of the curb, and then as you got past Agate Pine, it was the other side, and then it jumped back. So we got into this, ripped out all the blacktop. It was middle of July, and we said to the county, are you sure you want to leave that existing curb in place? They came out and looked at it, and honestly, when you look at it after all the blacktop and stuff's pulled away, it looks a lot different than when it's all complete, and they said, yeah, we need to do that. That resulted in the contractor taking out the rest of the curb and gutter, which ended up costing the county about $147,000 more on this project that they will contribute. But it also had the impact of, we never intended to remove the sidewalk between Daggett Pine and Moonlight. You're familiar with, your trail is a lot of blacktop, and then in that segment, it's concrete. When we pull the curb off, it's hooked, connected to that sidewalk, and so we damage the sidewalk. So the city ends up getting a sidewalk replacement cost of $27,974 as a result of that decision. So that's what change order number 4 is.
I'll move we pay the change order for $27,974.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I have a
Motion
question now.
carries.
Does this wrap up good enough where we can now bill the county and hopefully get our money from them this summer?
Have we requested the money from the county?
So,
well, that's what I'm asking.
So I don't know that we have the money, but we have had good discussions with the county as to what their portion. I think their portion is about $620-some thousand, and Mike is trying to get him to pay it all sooner than later.
Well, that's why I'm asking the
Yep.
question.
We've had conversations with all the appropriate people at the county.
Okay.
They've been aware of it since last fall.
Okay.
And they're waiting for us to say, hey, what's your final numbers, so we can do an amendment to get our funds.
Can we get them together so we can?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
That is, this is the final numbers, isn't it?
It is. So these are the change orders. Well, but these aren't payments. These are you agreeing to pay it. So we have a pay application coming, and it won't be a final, it'll be a partial. We haven't paid the contract anymore since November or December. We've tried to work through these change orders. We will be coming back at the March meeting with a request to give them a partial payment that will include these change orders, and they're going to want a retainage adjustment. On a project, we retain 5%. That's by contract. But once you reach substantial completion, state statute has directions that you are to reduce that retainage, and then it gives you guidance that you can reduce it to 250% of what you think the cost of the remaining punch list items are. So we're recommending that we retain $50,000. We think that there's about $20,000 worth of remaining punch list item work that has to be done. So I guess my point is you'll see a partial payment that'll include these change orders come before you in March. Then when the conditions get good enough for them to come in and pave, do the final adjusting the manhole rings and the other punch list items, then we will get this done. So we're kind of thinking it'll be June or July before you see a final. Because they really can't come back to work until we have thaw on everything.
Shar, did they vote on motion change order 4? I don't think they did. They did.
It's late.
You don't want me to talk anymore.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks for sticking around, Phil.
The engineer.
All right, TJ.
Can we beat 10 o'clock? I don't know, we'll see. Item 4A, in front of you, I have surplus items that we haven't used for 6+ years. Looking to get some money out of them.
I move to approve the sale.
Probably not, and that was gonna be a part of my request is we'll shoot for the stars and see what we can get, and if we don't, we'll just dispose of them.
I'll make a motion that we list, declare the property listed here as surplus and sell it.
I second.
By sealed bids?
No, we'll just sell it.
I don't think we can do that.
All in favor?
Second. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, 4B, last month you directed me to get a quote from Quality Equipment for a new Kubota, and just a update, our Polaris has been fixed and we used it to groom, I think, 3 times now. But here in front of you is the number to replace that with a Kubota. And we do have money in our signed fund balance to make this purchase.
So this is for the groomer, a track machine.
Track machine, and then we would, at the end of what we talked about, at least at the end of the grooming season, we would sell that, and then whenever the Kubota gets here, we get that.
And you think that's worth 18?
With today's market, yes, I do. 18 is the high end,
Is he talking about the?
because we're selling tracks as well.
You have 30 seconds before 10 o'clock, so you better hurry up.
Okay, well, I just make sure that it's a big enough machine to do what you're asking it to do.
We had all that listing of equipment last month. Maybe I dreamt that, but was that including some of the equipment you want to